Chapter 1143. Walking lightly into the spacious conference room. Shi Xiaotian saw Yu Qianqiu's familiar and warm smile at first glance. Shi Xiaotian's tense heart had just relaxed when he saw Yu Qianqiu's face gradually surging with a solemn expression. His heart immediately tightened again. He respectfully saluted and said, "Punishment envoy. Don't be so distant. There's no need to be like this between us." Yu Qianqiu sighed and shook his head. Actually, Shi Xiaotian had misunderstood him. He just suddenly realized that Shi Xiaotian had changed from that inexperienced youth to a tough middle-aged man. He felt like he was dreaming. He thought back to how pathetic they were when they escaped from Ongquangsung. In the blink of an eye, decades had passed. However, the Yu Qianqiu in Shi Xiaotian's eyes was still the same as before. Other than the baptism of hardships on his face, his entire aura had changed. He was no longer hiding in his own house, and didn't dare to go out. His appearance didn't seem to have changed much. Seeing that he was still a little reserved, Yu Qianqiu took the initiative to walk over and naturally put his arm on Shi Xiaotian's shoulder. He chuckled and said, "Xiaotian, I didn't expect a pretty boy like you to become so manly. It seems like you've seen many beauties in your family's palace." Although it was a teasing remark, such a familiar action immediately made Shi Xiaotian feel as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders. He realized that his boss was still the same boss and hadn't changed at all. Thus, the big man instantly became teary-eyed. He turned around and grabbed Yu Qianqiu's arm and choked, "Boss! What are you crying for? You're disgusting." Yu Qianqiu pushed him away. He didn't expect Shi Xiaotian to still be that unlucky person who cried at the slightest provocation. He pulled a chair behind him and sat down. He looked at Shi Xiaotian like he was looking at a playboy and said, "What's going on? Since you saw me, why didn't you come to find me? Take a seat and tell me slowly." He hooked a chair with his leg. Shi Xiaotian felt a little embarrassed under his gaze. He rubbed his eyes, sat opposite him, and told him the reason. It turned out that his current identity was already the state preceptor Yongzhen of the Wuxia Empire. After listening to Yu Qianqiu's words, he had never had much contact with the people of the cultivation world. However, when Yu Qianqiu ordered all the cultivators to gather at the cornucopia, he was a dignified state preceptor of the Wuxia Empire, and could be considered a person with a little fame in the cultivation world. Naturally, Hong Gang and Qing Gang couldn't miss him when they summoned people. When he received the notice that it was Yu Qianqiu who gathered all the cultivators in the world, he was extremely excited and eagerly ran to the gathering. When he arrived at the cornucopia, he saw millions of cultivators, among which there were even many experts. However, these people all worshipped Yu Qianqiu. He immediately understood that Yu Qianqiu was now the ruler of the world. Although he was some state preceptor, he didn't even have the qualifications to speak to Yu Qianqiu. He saw Yu Qianqiu's several appearances at the cornucopia, and he also hoped that Yu Qianqiu could see him. However, Yu Qianqiu's eyes only swept past him, and didn't linger on him at all. This further dispelled the idea of rashly looking for Yu Qianqiu. To be exact, he didn't dare to do so. After that, he saw Yu Qianqiu communicating with the heavenly thunder on the cornucopia to help everyone forge the immortal body. This made him tremble with fear, and didn't dare to be presumptuous. It was also here that he accidentally met Zhang Peng, an acquaintance. Otherwise, it would be difficult for the two to recognize each other even though they were so close. The conference room fell silent. Yu Qianqiu didn't say a word. He had gained a lot, and lost a lot along the way. As long as he continued to walk the path, such things would be unavoidable. Gains and losses would always accompany him. Shi Xiaotian looked at him silently. Thinking back to when the two of them were still working hard in Ongquangsung, he never thought that Yu Qianqiu's future achievements would reach such heights. He didn't know that there was always someone better than him. After a long silence, Yu Qianqiu slowly said, "Xiaotian, you should go back to the human world." Shi Xiaotian was startled and then said anxiously, "Boss, let me stay by your side and travel the 3 realms with you." After coming to the Divine Ruin Realm, and coming into contact with so many people and things, he realized that the outside world was actually so vast and so exciting. It was much more interesting than being the imperial preceptor in the human world. Moreover, he had such a powerful boss to protect him. He hadn't even seen the Immortal and Netherworld yet. How could he go back? Yu Qianqiu gently waved his hand and said with a faint smile, "The outside world isn't as fun as you think. There's a price to pay for fun. You might not think so. Now that you have forged the immortal body, it's better for you to stay in the human world and enjoy your wealth. You and I are brothers. This is all I can help you with. Let's go. Don't say any more. I'll send you back." With a wave of his hand, Shi Xiaotian suddenly felt the scene change. When it stabilized, he found that he had returned to the back garden of the Pillar of State General's residence. However, there was no one living here now. His entire family had moved into the palace, and only a few servants were here to take care of it. Shi Xiaotian looked around and knew that it was useless to say anything else. He forced a smile and said, "I didn't expect boss to still remember this place. Boss. Since you're already here, go to the palace and rest for a while. My father often mentions you and has been longing to see you again. I almost forgot, your family is already the royal family. It's good to know the way. Lead the way." Yu Qianqiu said with a faint smile. Shi Xiaotian let out a happy sigh and flew into the sky. Yu Qianqiu followed closely behind. The two of them quickly flew over the bustling capital city below and directly entered the grand palace. Under a gold-plated Yongzhen plaque, Shi Xiaotian invited Yu Qianqiu to sit in the imperial advisor's mansion. The eunuchs and attendants were ordered by Shi Xiaotian to work around the clock to serve Yu Qianqiu. Those eunuchs and attendants secretly looked at Yu Qianqiu in surprise, wondering who this young man was to make imperial advisor Yongzhen, who was second only to the emperor, treat him with such respect. Therefore, they didn't dare to neglect him. Yu Qianqiu didn't have the time to slowly enjoy this ostentatious scene. He told Shi Xiaotian to stop wasting time and quickly invite his family to meet him. Shi Xiaotian asked him to wait for a moment and quickly ran away. The group of eunuchs was even more shocked. This person actually dared to order the godlike imperial preceptor Yongzhen around like this. For a moment, they were so nervous that they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. They waited for a full 2 hours. Yu Qianqiu looked around the grand imperial preceptor Yongzhen and was still wondering why he was taking so long. Outside the door, a large group of men, women, old and young had already arrived. There were more than 100 people rushing in. Some of them were even infants in the arms of the women waiting to be fed. However, all of them were dressed luxuriously. The people in the front were all wearing yellow dragon robes. One look and one could tell that they were the descendants of the royal family. Many of them seemed to be puzzled. They didn't know why they were called here in such a hurry. Yu Qianqiu immediately saw Shi Wenguang, who looked vigorous despite his old age. Behind him were his sons and daughters-in-law. He didn't know the men, women, or children behind them, but it was obvious that they were all from the same family. Yu Qianqiu thought to himself, "My goodness, the royal family is indeed different. It's amazing how they spread their branches and leaves." Just as a smile appeared on his face, Shi Wenguang, who was wearing the dragon robe, was already in front of him. He was the first to kneel down and excitedly called out, "Mr." Regardless of whether they knew what was going on or not, when they saw the emperor kneeling down, they immediately followed suit in fear and called out, "Mr." Shi Xiaotian hurriedly stepped aside in embarrassment. The group of eunuchs and attendants were shocked by this scene, and immediately knelt down as well in horror. Yu Qianqiu, on the other hand, sat there calmly. He crossed his legs and raised his hand, saying, "Rise all of you. Rise." He also felt that he deserved this bow. He had given the greatest wealth in the mortal world to their family and saved their lives. It was not too much to accept their bow. Shi Wenguang immediately led a large group of his family members and stood up. Yu Qianqiu also stood up with a smile and walked in front of him, saying, "General Shi, you are still strong despite your age. Congratulations." He was too lazy to change the way he addressed him. "It's all thanks to Mr.'s favor. Mr. is still as elegant as ever, like a celestial being. Shi Wenguang can only envy you." Shi Wenguang was filled with endless gratitude. He was almost 90 years old, but he was still more spirited than his own descendants. He understood that this was the result of Yu Qianqiu's immortal elixir back then. He was even thinking of finding a suitable opportunity to ask for a few more. Yu Qianqiu smiled and turned his gaze to behind Shi Wenguang. There were 4 familiar faces who were used to a good life and had already changed their figures. There were 2 old men who were close to the end of their lives, and 2 graceful women. He pointed at them one by one and said with a smile, Shi yu tian shi in tian bao wan shi situ hui. Haha. Did I remember correctly? Greetings, Mr. The 4 people who were called out were pleasantly surprised and hurriedly came forward to salute. When the 2 women saw that the man who had some entanglements with them in the past was still as young as before, their eyes couldn't help but shine with admiration. Among them, Shi Yutian was even more excited. He had always been interested in becoming an immortal. Back then, he thought that Yu Qianqiu was a celestial being and had always wanted to follow him to cultivate. Now that he saw Yu Qianqiu's youthful appearance, he couldn't help but feel his heart itch. Where's Madame Li? Yu Qianqiu glanced at the crowd and didn't see the mistress of the house, Li Hongyang. As soon as he said this, the atmosphere suddenly became heavy. Shi Tian explained in a low voice, Mr. Mother passed away 5 years ago. I see. Yu Qianqiu nodded slightly and consoled. Birth, old age, sickness, and death are the laws of nature. Everyone, don't be too sad. His words were pleasant to the ears. Why didn't he look at himself standing there with his youthful appearance? Who wouldn't be envious of him? Moreover, Shi Wenguang had lived a long life because of him. Once a person reached the peak of riches and honor, he would naturally desire longevity. Shi Yutian suddenly thought of something, and hurriedly called out a group of juniors from the crowd to greet Yu Qianqiu. He even pulled their faces in front of Yu Qianqiu, as if he wanted Yu Qianqiu to take a closer look at them. In the end, the second son's daughter-in-law was also enlightened. She also pulled out her juniors for a walk. Yu Qianqiu glanced at the anxious Shi Yutian. He could see that this guy still hadn't changed. He didn't have the aptitude to cultivate, and he placed all his hopes on the juniors. Even the second son's daughter-in-law was infected. Chapter 1144. Not to mention that he didn't have the time. Even if he did, he wouldn't take away such a large group of cultivators in the human world and cultivate a new group for the royal family. He didn't want to embarrass Shi Xiaotian, so he perfunctorily told the group of princes, grandsons, and princesses that the people should be the foundation. He also emphasized that if he found anyone who bullied the people in the future, he would personally deal with them sooner or later. After scaring the group of juniors into submission, Yu Qianqiu used the excuse that he was tired and drove all of them away. Only Shi Xiaotian, who was apologizing, was left in the hall. With his back facing him, Yu Qianqiu picked up a cup of fragrant tea and took 2 sips. Suddenly he opened his palm, and 2 golden tokens quickly condensed and appeared in his hand. He threw them behind him and said, "Look carefully." Shi Xiaotian took the 2 tokens and looked at them carefully. There were 2 sides. One was engraved with the word order, and the other was engraved with the word country guardian. The surrounding decorations were all kinds of lifelike birds and beasts. The 2 tokens were exactly the same. After looking at them, he asked in confusion, "Boss, is this for me?" Yu Qianqiu put down the teacup in his hand and took back one of the tokens. He shook it and said, "You can use this token as a keepsake in the future. I'll give one to you, and I'll give the other to someone else. If one day someone comes to find you with this token, try to help them in a discreet way. You can only help them 3 times at most. After 3 times, you can take back this token." Shi Xiaotian nodded and said, "I'll remember." Yu Qianqiu put away the token and said indifferently, "There's one more thing I want to tell you. I've always hoped that the human world will be the human world, and that the grievances between mortals don't need to be interfered with by others. This is also one of the reasons why I drove all the cultivators in the human world away. Next, if possible, I'll get rid of all the demons and ghosts in the human world, so that the human world can be peaceful and fair. But I left you, a person who has already forged an immortal body, in the human world. I hope you understand my good intentions, and I also hope that you are worthy of the 2 words eternal suppression on this token that I gave you. After my wish is fulfilled, I hope that you can forever guard the peace of the human world, and not let any demons or ghosts in this world extend their hands into the human world." Shi Xiaotian didn't expect Yu Qianqiu to entrust the entire human world to him. In the midst of his excitement, he found that Yu Qianqiu had already disappeared, in a small town with simple folk customs in Wuxia. Yu Qianqiu quietly appeared in a luxurious mansion. He looked around and found that it was very different from when he left. On the basis of the old mansion, many nearby residences had been annexed. The old mansion still looked the same, but the new mansion with richly ornamented beams and painted rafters clearly showed the rich identity of the owner. Yu Qianqiu frowned and slowly strolled into the colorful garden. This was the place where he resettled his family. After seeing Shi Xiaoyan's family in the palace, he thought of his own home, so he decided to come and have a look. As a result, he saw a rich family. A few servants in the garden saw a stranger suddenly strolling in. From his clothes, he didn't look like someone important. They were about to question him, but they found that this person had an extraordinary aura as he strolled in the garden. He didn't look like an ordinary person, so they obediently shut their mouths. Not long after, a middle-aged man who looked like a housekeeper rushed over. He looked at Yu Qianqiu, then cupped his hands and smiled apologetically. "I'm the housekeeper of the Yu mansion. May I ask which new guest has come? Why haven't I seen you before?" It was still the Yu mansion. Yu Qianqiu indifferently said, "Tell Yu Wuqiu to come see me. Our master is in the reception hall discussing business with a guest. Please wait for a moment, I'll go inform him." The housekeeper nodded and bowed before running away. He had wanted to find out who the other party was. Why would someone suddenly appear? Even he, the housekeeper, did not know who this person was. However, when he thought about how there were people guarding the front and back doors, as well as the fact that there were also guards guarding the house, ordinary people would not be able to barge in. Hearing the other party's tone, he did not dare to be negligent. Not long after the housekeeper left, a fat man barged into the garden. He looked to be about 17 or 18 years old, but he was followed by 4 or 5 hedonistic sons of similar age. They walked in carelessly without a care for anyone else. A servant girl passing by bowed in surprise and called out, "Eldest young master." However, the eldest young master's scoundrel friends took advantage of her. She felt so wrong that she bit her lip and wanted to cry, but she did not dare to say anything. "Eldest young master?" Yu Qianqiu raised an eyebrow as he looked at the fat man. He thought to himself, "Could this be my nephew?" His gaze gradually turned cold as he walked to the center of the road with his hands behind his back. He stared coldly at the few hedonistic sons who had barged in. When the hedonistic sons saw that someone was blocking their way, they looked at each other and stopped. The fat man looked at Yu Qianqiu with uncertainty. He could not figure out where this person had come from. He actually dared to block the eldest young master's way in his own home. Yu Qianqiu could tell that although this fat man was a hedonistic son, he was also a shrewd person. He had learned to read people's expressions at such a young age. "I am the eldest young master of the Yu residence. May I know who you are, and why are you blocking our way in the inner garden of my house?" The fat man cupped his chubby hands and asked. Yu Qianqiu said calmly, "I do not know the eldest young master of the Yu residence. I just happened to pass by the back door and saw that it was open. I wanted to come in and ask for a cup of water." The hedonistic sons were stunned. This was the first time they had encountered something like this. The fat man was even more suspicious. There were people guarding the front and back doors of his house. It did not seem like it was that easy to enter. At this moment, the housekeeper hurriedly ran back. He first bowed to the fat man, then smiled apologetically at the hedonistic sons who addressed him as Young Master Li and Young Master Zhang. Finally, he walked up to Yu Qianqiu and said in a deep voice, "Who are you? My master said that there are no new guests in the house. You do not have the right to know who I am." Yu Qianqiu looked out of the garden and chuckled coldly. "It seems that I cannot invite him." "Oh. You really are trespassing on private property. Yui Wu, trespassing on private property can be reported to the authorities." "What authorities? Just beat him out of here." The group of hedonistic sons began to fan the flames. The fat man's expression immediately became twisted. He took a few steps forward and grabbed Yu Qianqiu's collar. However, he found that he could not move it at all. Before he could say anything, he saw Yu Qianqiu give him a slap at lightning speed. Pa! The fat man's body flew into the air. He had probably never flown so happily in his entire life. He directly crashed into the nursery garden a few meters away. The disorderly flowering shrubs immediately let out a miserable howl that sounded like a pig being slaughtered. Yu Qianqiu laughed coldly. It was already not bad that he could still scream. If it was not for the fact that he was his nephew, he would have taken his life on the spot. You dare to hit someone? Let's go together. The group of hedonistic sons were very united. With a shout, they immediately rushed forward shoulder to shoulder. In the end, there was a series of paw-paw sounds. Figures flew everywhere. The nursery garden was filled with miserable howls that sounded like pigs being slaughtered. Just as the housekeeper went to help the eldest young master up, he saw the eldest young master, whose face was swollen like a pig's head, yell indistinctly, "Guards! Guards! Where the hell did everyone go?" Actually, there was no need for him to shout. A group of household servants who were guarding the house had already rushed over with their weapons. The eldest young master pointed with his finger and yelled indistinctly, "Beat him to death. I will take responsibility for beating him to death." The group of household servants immediately rushed forward, yelling and beating him with sticks like rain. Who knew that as soon as they rushed forward, a group of people would be sent flying. One by one, they lay on the ground. Ouch, ouch, ouch. They didn't even see how Yu Qianqiu made his move, and they couldn't get up. The rest of the people were shocked and didn't dare to approach. They didn't know that this was because Yu Qianqiu didn't want to make a big deal out of it, because it was his own family. He also didn't want to shock the world. Otherwise, with his temper, he was afraid that not a single one of these people would survive. The fat young master and the few hedonistic sons who staggered to get up were dumbfounded. The first thought that came to their minds was that they had encountered an expert in Jianghu. It was the first time that they had seen such a handsome person. The fat young master covered half of his swollen face and looked left and right. It was obvious that these household servants were no match for this expert. Meanwhile, Yu Wuqiu, who was discussing business in the flower hall, was finally alarmed by the movement here. A burst of hurried footsteps came from outside the garden. Yu Qianqiu, who had 3 strands of long beard on his face, rushed over with a group of servants. Seeing this movement, everyone fell to the ground. The servants ran to their son, who had been beaten into a pig's head, and asked what had happened. Naturally, the spearhead was pointed at Yu Qianqiu without exception. The group of servants immediately roared, and some even questioned Yu Wuqiu about what had happened. How could there be someone in the family who would hurt someone? Yu Wuqiu, who was already 40 years old, saw Yu Qianqiu standing in the air. How could he not recognize him? He was stunned as if he had been struck by lightning. He said, "Big, big, big." Just as he was about to call him big brother, he was glared at by Yu Qianqiu. He immediately realized that his big brother didn't want to reveal his identity. "Is this foppish fatty your son?" Yu Qianqiu pouted at the fat young master and said. Yu Wuqiu immediately ran over with sweat on his head and said with embarrassment, "Big, why didn't you tell me that you were coming? Is there some misunderstanding?" When the group of servants and foppish young masters saw Yu Wuqiu's appearance, they immediately looked at each other in surprise and doubt. Almost without exception, from the word big, they thought of a certain person. Businessmen were most afraid of fighting with officials, so for a moment, they all quieted down. "Haven't I already asked someone to inform you? You are very arrogant now. Even I can't invite you. I didn't expect it to be so difficult to see you. And you are such a good son." Yu Qianqiu once again pouted at the fat young master and said, "You actually dared to make a move against me and even said that you wanted to kill me. The son you taught is really promising." Yu Wuqiu was shocked. His elder brother was like a celestial being who could fly in the sky and burrow into the earth. Moreover, he had a group of incomparably powerful subordinates. Any one of them was a celestial being that mortals couldn't even beg for. His son had actually attacked his elder brother. Taking 10,000 steps back, there was no reason for a nephew to hit his uncle. Besides, in the future, he still hoped to rely on this big brother to help him when he was in trouble. Yu Wuqiu was really angry. He glared at his fat son and shouted angrily, "Unfilial son, come here." The fat young master was so scared that his whole body trembled. He covered his swollen face with one hand and secretly pulled the housekeeper with the other, meaning to ask the housekeeper to come forward and plead for him. Chapter 1145. What matters could be pleaded for and what matters could not be pleaded for. A steward would naturally be able to figure out from his master's words and actions. This time, the master was really angry. The steward sighed in his heart and stole a glance at Yu Qianqiu. He knew that he had provoked a big shot who could not be provoked. So not only did he not plead for the young master, but he reached out and pushed the young master's fat waist, motioning him to obediently admit his mistake. The steward also understood that the young master was the master's son after all. No matter how angry the master was, he would at most punish the young master. He would not really do anything to the young master. Would he kill him? The fat young master glanced at his gang of scoundrels. As a result, everyone could see that he had provoked a big shot. Those who could bully others naturally knew better than ordinary people that they could not bully those who were more powerful than them. So they all showed a look of brother, you're on your own. Unfilial son. You dare to disobey my words? Yu Wuqiu roared again. His face was distorted with anger. The fat young master trembled with fear. In addition, the steward beside him gently pushed him. He finally covered the left side of his swollen face, trembling with fear, and weakly called out, "Father! I'll beat you to death, you unfilial son." Without saying anything, Yu Wuqiu also slapped him. With a slap, the fat young master staggered and a bright red palm print appeared on the right side of his face. But compared to Yu Qianqiu's slap, it was naturally much better. He did not fly up. He could still bear this little pain. Kneel. Yu Wuqiu pointed in front of Yu Qianqiu's feet. He wanted his son to kneel and apologize to his elder brother. What a joke. Yu Wuqiu knew better than anyone that his son had suffered a little grievance. As long as his elder brother could forgive him, the benefits in the future would be unimaginable. If he really offended his elder brother, it would be too late for regrets. The group of outsiders became even more bewildered, and they were certain that Yu Qianqiu was some great figure. Otherwise, Yu Wuqiu wouldn't have believed that it was his son's fault without even asking whether it was right or wrong. Those who were more quick-witted turned around and slapped their own sons, baffling them. Then, they grabbed their confused sons by the ears and dragged them to Yu Qianqiu's side. They kicked the back of his knees and forced him to kneel down. Only then did they cup their hands to Yu Qianqiu and said, "A great man does not remember the mistakes of a lowly man. My son has offended you, please forgive him." When he took the lead, the others thought that he had recognized who it was, and in the end they all followed suit. A series of slapping sounds rang out, and the group of good-for-nothings were all dragged over to kneel and apologize, causing the two brothers, Yu Qianqiu and Yu Wuqiu, to be stunned. The fat young master was immediately dumbfounded. He did not need his father to yell again. Without saying he knelt, kneeled, and knelt said, "He not. Lord." Yu Qianqiu suddenly understood. This group of rich landlords thought he was an official. He was too lazy to argue with these mortals. However, he made up his mind to punish the people in his family. He pointed at the fat young master and said, "You, come here." The fat young master secretly glanced at his father. Seeing that his father was about to kick, he quickly got up and slowly moved over. "Which hand hit me just now?" Yu Qianqiu said indifferently. "Take it out and let me see." Yu Wuqiu's pupils constricted, and he suddenly had a bad feeling. He'd witnessed his big brother's decisiveness in killing. Even though he was young all those years ago, he'd personally witnessed his big brother cleansing an entire stronghold of bandits with blood, and that scene was deeply engraved in his mind. Then he saw his son weakly stretch out a fat hand. Yu Wuqiu suddenly felt his throat go dry. He wanted to say something, but he could not. A mournful howl echoed throughout the Yu mansion. The fat young master was already kneeling on the ground. He opened his mouth and let out a dry howl. His face was deathly pale. Yu Qianqiu had pinched his palm, and his entire right palm had already been crushed into a bloody pulp. Blood spurted out and splashed onto his friends on both sides. The group of foppish playboys were so frightened that they collapsed to the ground. Their faces turned pale in an instant. The group of rich landlords were also frightened to the point of trembling. They hurriedly dragged their sons away, afraid that they would also be killed. Yu Wuqiu looked at his big brother with a pale face. His son fainted on the ground. Yu Wuqiu's heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. This was his son. How could his big brother be so cruel? However, he did not dare to say or do anything. Irrelevant people, get lost. Yu Qianqiu glanced at the crowd and said. The group of rich landlords immediately cupped their hands and bid farewell to Yu Wuqiu. They hurriedly grabbed their weak sons and ran away. It was also at this time that a few women who had heard the news rushed over. The woman in the lead fell to the ground and hugged her unconscious son, crying loudly. Not long after, she also fainted. The other women called out a few times, but saw that the master was standing there in a daze as if he did not see anything. They then hurriedly called for the servants to carry the fainted mother and son away for treatment. Find a quiet place. I have something to say to you. Yu Qianqiu turned around and said. Yu Wuqiu recovered from his daze and led his big brother into the old mansion with difficulty. After entering the main hall of the old mansion, Yu Wuqiu said bitterly, My parents were afraid that you would not be able to find a place when you came back. They never agreed to let us renovate this old mansion, so they kept it in the new mansion. Where are my parents? Are they well? Yu Qianqiu asked with his back facing him. Better than us children, Yu Wuqiu muttered. Yu Wuqiu muttered. My parents are used to farming in Utopia, so they bought a few pieces of land at the foot of Nanshan with a few farmers to farm. They said that if you came back, they would let you go over and take a look. What? You think I was too harsh on your son? Yu Qianqiu turned around and asked. Yu Wuqiu said, Big brother must have his reasons for doing this. I'm afraid that's not what you think. Yu Qianqiu stared at him and sneered. If it wasn't for the sake of our family, I could have taken his life today. It wouldn't have been worth the effort. He has such bad habits at such a young age. It shows what kind of a father you are. If I hadn't seen and heard it, I wouldn't have dared to do this. Why are you and your son so arrogant? Do you really think that no one in this world can deal with you? It's good that you met me today. If you fall into someone else's hands in the future, no one will be merciful. Today, I broke one of his hands so that when he does evil in the future, he will think about today's pain and have some scruples. At the same time, it's also for you to remember. I will remember Big Brother's lesson. Yu Wuqiu bowed and said. In fact, he didn't think much of it in his heart. He could be considered to be a wealthy man now, and he had made friends with many influential officials. He had never seen anything that couldn't be settled with money and power. As long as he had enough money and influence, nothing was a problem. Moreover, he had an unfathomable big brother behind him. He felt that his big brother had been cultivating for a long time, and was out of touch with this era. However, he only dared to think this in his heart, and didn't dare to say it out loud. Yu Qianqiu squinted and stared at him for a while. A fierce look flashed across his face. After some hesitation, he took out the token with the words Yongzhen engraved on it and handed it over. Yu Wuqiu's gloomy eyes immediately lit up. He knew that the thing his big brother gave him was definitely not something ordinary. He asked in excitement, Big brother, is this for me? Seeing his big brother nod, he quickly took it and carefully examined it. He then asked, Big brother, this is? The Imperial Court's Imperial Preceptor Yongzhen owes me a favor. I asked him for this token. If the Yu clan encounters any trouble in the future, you can use this token to seek his help. Yu Qianqiu warned again, remember, don't use this token unless you encounter a disaster that you can't resolve. It can only resolve 3 disasters for the Yu clan. After 3 times, the Imperial Preceptor Yongzhen will take it back. You must remember this. To a mortal like Yu Wuqiu, the reputation of the Imperial Preceptor Yongzhen in the Wuxia Empire was many times greater than his big brother's. In their eyes, the Imperial Preceptor Yongzhen was a true god. He was a person who stood above everyone else in the entire Wuxia Empire. With this token, he could resolve 3 troubles. This was no different from the 3 death exemption tokens given by the Imperial Preceptor Yongzhen. Yu Wuqiu held the token as if it was a priceless treasure. He said excitedly, I know. I heard that the reason why the current emperor was able to conquer this world was because of the Imperial Preceptor Yongzhen's ability to cast beams to form soldiers. I've also heard from some merchants that the Imperial Preceptor Yongzhen doesn't easily interfere with the affairs of the imperial court. However, if he were to speak, he could even decide the next successor to the throne. Big brother, you have such a precious thing for me instead of keeping it for yourself. It can be seen that you still have our Yu clan in your heart. I was thinking too much just now. Little brother apologizes to big brother. As he spoke, he held the token and bowed deeply 3 times. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. He didn't expect that the crying Shi Xiaotian in front of him would have such a great reputation in the secular world. His Shi clan's world was actually obtained by Shi Xiaotian's casting beams to form soldiers. Then what did he spend so much effort for? However, it made sense. Given Shi Xiaotian's status in the Shi clan, he could really decide the successor to the throne. If Shi Xiaotian objected, it would be useless no matter who in the Shi clan objected. Looking at this little brother of his who smelled like a commoner, Yu Qianqiu sighed in his heart. He didn't say anything else. It was indeed not good for him to meddle too much in the affairs of the secular world. Otherwise, how could he convince the masses? However, he had transmigrated to this family, and it was thanks to this family that he was fated to embark on the path of cultivation. It was impossible for him to abandon the family and completely ignore it. Even animals knew how to repay kindness, so how could he be dismissive of it? He didn't want to meddle in the affairs of the secular world, but he had still clenched his teeth and created this token against his will. He hoped that it would protect the Yu clan for 3 generations. Today, he had ruthlessly crippled his eldest nephew's hand in order to teach the Yu clan a lesson they would never forget. If the Yu clan cherished their fortune, they would naturally avoid using the command medallion as much as possible. In that case, the medallion might not only protect 3 generations of the Yu clan, but also 5, 6, or even more than 10 generations. On the other hand, the 3 uses of the command medallion might not even be enough for a single generation. One could imagine just how bad the character of the Yu clan was. Chapter 1146. Although he was not a good person in both of his lives, behind his great evil was a bodhisattva's heart. Using violence to fight violence, using evil to fight evil was his method, but he had never used the slightest bit of violence against any good people, nor did he do anything to make things difficult for them. He knew very well that the people who suffered the most between the rise and fall of the country were the dull and ignorant citizens. Perhaps he still had a conscience and always wished to do something for them when he had the ability. However, the affairs of the world were unpredictable, and there were some things that he could not predict. He did not know what it would mean for the Yu clan if he gave this token to them. Today, he had ruthlessly crippled his nephew's hand because he had always been ruthless in dealing with the root of the problem. He did not have that much time to carefully teach his nephew, so he could only forcefully set things right. It was better to suffer for a while than to suffer for a lifetime. This had indeed taught Yu Wuqiu and his son a lesson. In the past 2 generations, they had not used this token even once. However, the Yu clan's business had grown bigger and bigger. As the saying goes, wealth does not last more than 3 years. This was not without reason. With the accumulation of wealth, the descendants did not know the difficulties their ancestors had to go through, did not know the impermanence and dangers of the world, and sat on the wealth they had left behind. What trouble could they not easily solve? Over time, how could their temperament and disposition be as normal as a normal person's? When their mentality became distorted, they would inevitably do some evil things for the sake of wealth. When it came to the 3rd generation under Yu Wuqiu, the expansion of wealth caused the 3rd generation to become somewhat unscrupulous. Finally, he got into trouble. In fact, he did not provoke any powerful figures. He had only taken a fancy to the beauty of a general's daughter. The 3rd generation did not care about her at all. Thinking that he had a good relationship with the general's superior, he directly raped the general's daughter. As a result, the general flew into a rage. The other party held military power, but he could not even protect his own daughter. How could the general endure this? As a result, he threw caution to the wind. He did not care whether the general was a superior or a superior. He brazenly gathered the troops under his command, and carried out a bloodbath on the prosperous Yu clan. Almost everyone was killed, and the wealth that had been accumulated over several generations was snatched away. Fortunately, his old man had suffered a loss at the hands of Yu Qianqiu. Since then he still had a lingering fear, so the family recruited many Jianghu experts. Coincidentally, at the time of this disaster, those Jianghu masters who had received his father's kindness desperately fought a bloody path out of the thousands of soldiers and horses for him, protecting him all the way to escape. As for his family and whatnot, he did not care about them. It could be said that he had received a great retribution. After that, the general did not let him go. He swore to kill him to avenge his daughter. He led the army to chase. Only when an even larger suppression army arrived did the general stop. Seeing that the entire Yu clan had been destroyed, the terrified Yu clan naturally wanted to take revenge. Thus, he sought help from the high officials he had a good relationship with. Those high officials readily agreed. Seeing that the entire Yu clan had been destroyed, the ordinary people did not dare to say anything. When they saw that someone was leading the army to take revenge, they immediately flocked to follow. Coupled with some people with ulterior motives, an explosion was inevitable. The imperial court was afraid that the world would be in chaos. In order to stabilize the morale of the army and the people, a mere Yu clan was nothing. Now that the Yu clan's wealth had been scattered, it was even less of a problem. Moreover, there were people who wanted to seize the Yu clan's properties. Naturally, they pushed him out to appease the world. The well-informed Yu clan panicked when he heard the news. At the critical moment, he remembered the token passed down by his ancestor. Thus, with the mentality of making a desperate attempt, he took the token and went to the entrance of the palace to seek an audience with the imperial preceptor Yongzhen. The moment the token was revealed, it became extremely powerful. The imperial preceptor Yongzhen, who had long since left the secular world, issued a decree to summon him. This shocked the entire palace. This was a character that even the emperor found difficult to meet. After seeing the Yu clan and hearing that his surname was Yu, the imperial preceptor Yongzhen immediately thought of Yu Qianqiu. He then asked about the background of his ancestor. After learning that the Yu clan's grandfather was Yu Wuxia, he was even more certain that the Yu clan was related to Yu Qianqiu. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Boss gave the world to his Shi clan, but let his own clan sink into the common people. This magnanimity was something that he couldn't help but admire. After learning about the trouble he had caused, the imperial preceptor Yongzhen only frowned slightly. He immediately issued a decree to the current emperor to exterminate the rebel army and the people, restoring peace to the world. Since this all-powerful ancestor had spoken, the entire imperial court immediately quieted down. With the fastest speed and highest efficiency, the army was assembled. Within a few months, all the chaos was quelled. And the Yu clan's third generation profited from the disaster. No one expected that he actually had the backing of the world's #1 expert. As a result, no one dared to touch his properties, and they all returned to the Yu clan. The ones who suffered the most were the generals and the rebellious people. The first thing the Yu clan's third generation did after obtaining a new life was to cherish the memory of his ancestor. He wept bitterly in front of his ancestor's memorial tablet and thanked his ancestor for saving his life. The second thing he did was to work hard to reproduce and make up for the Yu clan's losses. At this point, the Yu clan's third generation finally knew how to restrain himself. Because everyone knew that the Yu clan had a relationship with the state preceptor Yongzhen, the rise of the Yu clan was inevitable. By the time the fourth generation of the Yu clan became the head of the Yu clan's power had already reached the pinnacle of both the political and commercial realms. The result of this was that the hearts of the people were not satisfied. By the fifth generation of the Yu clan had begun to covet the imperial power. However, they were still somewhat apprehensive about the state preceptor Yongzhen. When it came to the sixth generation, it was terrible. That fellow was extremely daring and actually deceived the sovereign step by step, testing the reaction of the state preceptor Yongzhen. After seeing that the state preceptor Yongzhen had no intention of interfering, he brazenly plotted to collude with the throne. In the end, it did not work out. The sad thing was that the success of the imperial preceptor was also due to the failure of the imperial preceptor. This was because all the armies in the world were also wary of the immortal-like imperial preceptor Yongzhen. When they saw that someone was plotting against the throne, all the grand marshals of the army who usually listened to him immediately turned their weapons against him, and all of them sent their troops to protect the emperor. The result was obvious. However, the command medallion was put to good use again, and Yongzhen personally appeared to protect the Yu clan. This made everyone puzzled. Could this Yu clan be the illegitimate child of imperial preceptor Yongzhen? Why was he helping his own clan when they rebelled? As a result, the monarch was no longer the sovereign, and the subjects were no longer the subjects. Everyone started to look down on the sovereign. Only the sixth generation of the imperial preceptor Yongzhen could do anything about it. He ran to the residence of the state preceptor Yongzhen and cried for a few days, saying that he was the state preceptor of the imperial preceptor Yongzhen and couldn't help him. As a result, the state preceptor Yongzhen became gloomy. How could the descendant of this boss endlessly torment him? In the end, the state preceptor Yongzhen made up his mind and summoned the sixth generation of the imperial preceptor Yongzhen. He asked him, "If you want to sit on the throne, then say that I promised your ancestor to help your Yu clan 3 times. If you want to sit on the throne, then I will help you 3 times and fulfill my promise. However, you will have to return the command medallion to me. This is the only price you have to pay. Think about it carefully and stop tormenting yourself endlessly. If you continue tormenting yourself, then the world will fall into chaos." As a result, the sixth generation of the imperial preceptor Yongzhen bashfully expressed that he indeed had that intention. He was afraid that the state preceptor Yongzhen wouldn't agree, and was too embarrassed to say it out loud. The state preceptor Yongzhen immediately felt a toothache. As expected of the descendant of the imperial preceptor Yongzhen, his shamelessness was quite similar to that of the imperial preceptor Yongzhen. As a result, he took back the command medallion and personally dealt with this matter. He called the emperor over and bluntly said, "The Shi clan's empire was actually gifted to us by the Yu clan's ancestor. My current achievements are also thanks to the Yu clan's ancestor. Now that their descendant wants us to repay this debt, we cannot refuse to pay it back. Otherwise, I won't be able to explain it to his ancestor. Prepare to abdicate, I will give you a good home." Just like that, the Yu clan finally fell into the hands of the sixth generation of the imperial preceptor Yu, and successfully took control of the entire Wuxia empire without bloodshed. The first thing the sixth generation of the imperial preceptor Yu did was the same as the third generation of the imperial preceptor Yu. However, he brought a group of descendants to kneel in front of the ancestral tablets and cried bitterly, thanking the ancestors for their great kindness. After going through all the ancestral tablets, one would realize that Yu Qianqiu's name was nowhere to be seen. There was nothing to do with Yu Qianqiu. Meanwhile, imperial preceptor Yongzhen gathered all the descendants of the Shi clan together. There were tens of thousands of them, and they were all brought to the Eastern Holy Land to start a new life there. After fulfilling the 3 promises, imperial preceptor Yongzhen actually heaved a sigh of relief. All these years, he had been bound by the 3 promises on the command medallion. That was why he had been staying in that boring imperial palace, waiting for the person who brought the command medallion to find him. He was afraid that his departure would delay his boss's matters. After fulfilling the promise, imperial preceptor Yongzhen floated away in the vast world. The descendants of the Shi clan also didn't know where he went. At this moment, Yu Qianqiu didn't know what would happen next. If he knew, he might not have given the command medallion away. Yu Wuqiu, who was bowing to thank his big brother, suddenly heard a commotion. He raised his head and saw that his big brother was no longer there. Instead, he saw his wife barging in with a group of people. He couldn't help but feel furious. Right now he was so regretful that his intestines were turning green. If it wasn't for the fact that he had gotten used to those beautiful sword-wielding beauties back in Utopia, and had such a wonderful impression of them, he wouldn't have fallen in love with this woman at first sight. After tasting her, he realized that she was simply too shrewish. She would always bring weapons out to fight for her life. Just looking at her made his head hurt. "Where is the person who attacked my son? Get him to come out." The shrewd woman who barged in with a sword roared angrily. With a wave of her hand, A group of servants who were also holding weapons started searching for the person in the old residence. Pa! Wuxia walked over and gave her a slap. He pointed at his stunned wife and scolded. Is that someone you can scold? If you keep making noise, I'll divorce you. He also looked around, afraid that his big brother would be in trouble if he heard what his wife said. Unexpectedly, his wife didn't appreciate his kindness. She stomped her feet and cried. How dare you hit me? I'll fight you to the death. She raised her sword and chased after him, causing Wuxia to run around. A group of servants quickly came over to stop the fight. At this moment, Qianqiu had already arrived at the foot of the southern mountain outside the town. He landed in a large thicket behind a house that was obviously much more luxurious than the houses of the surrounding farmers. He swept his gaze across the surrounding fields, and saw an old couple in coarse clothes returning from the fields. He couldn't help but freeze. The man had a hoe on his shoulder, and the woman had a bamboo basket on her waist that contained some fresh vegetables. The two of them chatted and laughed along the way, looking very healthy. They even helped each other cross the ditches in the fields from time to time. After seeing the old couple enter the house, Qianqiu still didn't move. After listening to the conversation in the house, he couldn't help but smile. When the sound of pots and pans could be heard, and smoke began to billow out from the chimney, he felt that the matters of the secular world had been resolved with the billowing smoke. Qianqiu's gaze suddenly looked towards the distant horizon, and gradually became fierce. He had already made up his mind. He wouldn't tolerate anyone disturbing this pure land of the mortal world, not even the supreme of the demon world, Demon King 3 Knights. The leaves gently swayed, and the people in the thicket had already disappeared. Over the ditches that the old couple had crossed, there were now stone bridges that were very sturdy and exquisite. Chapter 1147. Those who attacked from the dark had more or less an advantage, and the methods they could choose were more than those who defended passively. After Jintai and Baiqi ran around for a while, they had already grasped the general situation of the netherworld and celestial world. The two of them immediately took action. First, they joined hands to cause a ruckus in the celestial world, destroying several large sects and causing panic among the sects in the celestial world. Suddenly, they took the risk to attack the headquarters of the Passionless Palace, almost razing the entire headquarters to the ground. The enraged Wang Qing chased after them all the way, but he was actually lured into the underworld by the two of them. Wu Feng, who heard the news, immediately came to help. After a fierce battle, Jintai and Baiqi pretended to be injured and fled. Wang Qing and his son saw the two of them were injured, and immediately became spirited. They chased them in the netherworld, looking like they wanted to take advantage of the two of them being injured to get rid of them. With the annihilation of the Purgatory Army and the retreat of the Red Armored Army, the Endless Horizon, the place that caused all living beings in the netherworld to tremble, had long since changed. There was only lava flowing everywhere. A few flowing lights flew past the endless horizon, and the enemies that were faintly discernible were about to escape into the mysterious forbidden area. Wu Feng, who was chasing them, laughed sharply and shouted angrily, Jintai Baiqi, the mysterious forbidden area is in front, you have nowhere to run. Today is the day you die. The day we die? Jintai's wild laughter came from afar. Ignorant fools, I'll let you and your son be happy for a few days. There will be time for you to cry. Wang Qing, who was flying quickly behind Wu Feng, suddenly frowned and said, Father, why do I feel that something is wrong? Why can't I see Baiqi? That guy has always been known for his speed. Naturally, he ran faster than Jintai. Wu Feng's voice suddenly paused, and he stopped in the air. Amidst the rolling heat waves and the soaring red light, he shouted, Not good. We've fallen into the trap of these two scoundrels. Wang Qing's expression changed. In the blink of an eye, he seemed to understand something and quickly turned back. The father and son looked at each other silently for a while, and their faces gradually turned pale. Without saying a word, they turned around and flew back almost without hesitation. Haha! Jintai's arrogant laughter came from afar again. It's too late for you to understand now. A streak of golden light was reflected back, and it chased after the father and son at an even faster speed. Golden light flashed from its body, and its disheveled golden robes were completely refurbished, and it didn't appear that it had been injured in the slightest. Suddenly, the sky above the underworld rumbled unceasingly, and the fierce sound of fighting constantly resounded between heaven and earth. Jintai relied on his faster speed to continuously chase after Wang Qing and his son. When the father and son attacked, he immediately turned around and fled. At this time, anyone could see that Jintai was stalling for time. On the way, Wu Feng finally received an urgent message from his sister, Lady Blackpool. She said that Bai Qi was on a killing spree at the exit between the underworld and the celestial world. No one could stop him. Now no one dared to go near that area. She asked the father and son to quickly go and help. This confirmed the father and son's guess. Jintai and Bai Qi had pretended to be injured and set up a trap to lure the father and son. Then, Bai Qi would use his faster speed to quickly open the passage to the demon world, and Jintai would stall them to buy more time for Bai Qi. However, what the father and son could not understand was that since Bai Qi had already reached the exit between the two realms, why didn't he hurry to open the passage to the demon world? Why was he wasting time by killing people at the exit? With Bai Qi's cultivation, if the father and son were stalled here, who could stop Bai Qi from opening the passage to the demon world? Once he thought of this, he didn't have time to think about anything else. He used all his strength to defeat Queen Jean and immediately said anxiously, "Father, every passage to the demon world is blocked by many formations. Even if Bai Qi wants to open the passage to the demon world, he won't be able to do so in a short period of time. Your flying speed is faster than mine, so quickly chase after Bai Qi. There's still time. I will stall Jintai. Go quickly." "All right," Wu Feng shouted and quickly disappeared into the distance with the wind god's staff. Wang Qing turned around and chased after Jintai. "Trying to run? It won't be that easy." Jintai laughed evilly. He did not want to fight with Wang Qing at all. He quickly dodged Wang Qing and used his even faster speed to tangle with Wu Feng. His golden cloud rod shone brightly as it smashed towards Wu Feng. Wu Feng, who had to fight back, was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Time waits for no man. But he had no choice but to block. When Wang Qing caught up again, he shouted angrily, "You go! I'll stop him." Wang Qing's expression was serious as he flew past the two fighting. However, after fighting for a while, Jintai immediately avoided Wu Feng and chased after Wang Qing again. Just like this, the father and son were forced to fight with Jintai. They had to block as they rushed. However, Jintai's cultivation was too high and he couldn't do anything to him. Jintai wasted a lot of time. When the father and son finally arrived at the passage between the underworld and the celestial world, they found that a large area of the passage was blocked by fog. A group of people were trying their best to break the formation. The rumbling caused the ground to tremble continuously. However, how could the hundreds of formations that Bai Qi had personally set up be compared to the motley crew? The group of people only broke through a dozen formations after a whole day. Waha! Bai Qi, you're really something. You're giving them a taste of their own medicine. Looking at this, Jintai laughed wildly. Their plan was to make use of the time difference. That was why they deliberately lured Wang Qing and his son to a remote area of the underworld, so that Bai Qi could rely on his speed to buy more time to open the passage to the demon world. However, what Jintai didn't expect was that Bai Qi would come up with a stroke of genius on the spot. He learned from the people of the Immortal Realm and Netherworld, and set up a large number of great arrays on the passageway between the two realms. In turn, he blocked the pursuit of Wang Qing and his son. Seeing this, the stone in Jintai's heart fell to the ground. If it was as he expected, Bai Qi should have also set up many formations on the side of the celestial world to stop them. This way, opening the passage to the demon world would not have any more twists and turns. It should be in the bag. How could he not be happy? "Stop him! I'll break the formation!" Wu Feng shouted angrily. Wang Qing turned around and charged at the arrogant Jintai. The latter immediately stood not too far away, clearly wanting to continue to delay one of the father and son, not letting them work together to break the formation. A huge staff flew into the night sky, like a meteor falling from the sky. It smashed into the depths of the white mist with a boom. The ground shook violently. The people who were originally surrounding this place to break the formation did not expect Wu Feng to attack, without even giving them a warning. They were so scared that they scattered like birds and beasts to avoid being accidentally injured. No matter how powerful the defensive power of the formation that Bai Qi had set up was, it could not withstand a single strike from the Divine Wind Staff. With a single strike, the formation was broken. The Divine Wind Staff shot up into the sky again, turning into a speck of starlight that grew larger and larger before crashing down again. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Half a day later, the mist finally dispersed and the hundreds of formations were finally broken. Wangqing, you guard the passage, don't let that traitor come and cause trouble. Wu Feng screamed and grabbed the wind god staff, shooting into the spinning black light. However, what he didn't expect was that the moment he came out of the passage, he immediately saw the twisting power of the world spinning towards him. It was terrifyingly strong. Wu Feng was shocked and immediately understood that Bai Qi had laid down a killing formation to wait for him. In a moment of panic, he almost fell for it. Luckily, the treasure in his hand was the wind god staff. With an angry shout, a ball of abominable black wind suddenly exploded, dispersing the huge killing force. The wind god staff rapidly expanded, and with a boom, it directly pierced through the entire mountain, breaking apart the formation and the mountain. His figure flew out along the white light above his head, and came out of the mountain. He saw the dense mist formation again, and there were still rumbling sounds outside. Clearly, there were also people breaking the formation outside. Wu Feng pointed towards the sky without hesitation. The enormous wind god staff was like an enormous wind drill that spun rapidly and drilled into the white mist above his head. Rumble! Rumble! A series of explosions rang out. After another half a day, the fog dispersed, and another 100 or so formations were broken. Wu Feng flew into the air and grabbed the wind god staff. Ignoring the dumbfounded crowd around him, he headed straight for the Immortal World's Devil World's tunnel. Bai Qi, who had killed his way here, had already reached the outskirts of the passage to the Demon World 3 days earlier. At this time, the obsidian light mirror in his hand was exploding with uneven black light, clearing away the messy formations along the way. For more than a day, the obsidian light mirror had not stopped operating. In the distance, a large group of people were watching this scene in a daze. However, Bai Qi's cultivation base was too high for them. They were no match for him at all. Rushing forward would be suicide. Some of the people who had rushed forward regardless of the cost were directly turned into ashes by the obsidian nether light mirror in Bai Qi's hand. No one dared to move recklessly. They could only watch helplessly, not knowing what to do. Emperor of the Underworld, quickly stop. Once the demon world is opened, you know better than us what the consequences will be. Someone shouted with tears of blood. As long as you are willing to give up on opening the passage to the demon world, we are willing to restore the original order of the celestial world and the netherworld, and worship you forever. Yes, yes. Countless people shouted. Emperor of the Underworld, quickly stop. Bai Qi's expression changed as if he was moved. If he was not forced, he would not want to open the demon world again. However, he instantly calmed down, and his indifferent voice resounded through the sky. Wait until you can be the master of Wu Feng and Wangqing. Then say such words to me. Otherwise, it is no different from farting. Who can truly understand what I have done for the 3 realms for so many years? In the end, aren't you going against me just because you say so? Haha. I would rather betray the world than let the world betray me. Why not kill all the heartless people? His voice was filled with grief and anger. The black light suddenly soared, breaking the few magic formations with all its power. A huge mountain with a steel inlaid on it appeared in the mist. Under the illumination of the black light, the accumulated dust and vines on the steel were all swept away. Dense and strange magic symbols were engraved on the steel. Seal of the demon world. A wave of terrified exclamations came from the crowd in the distance. There were still many formations that had not been broken behind the large mountain and on both sides, but those were not important. At this time, Bai Qi could not hear the urgent shouts behind him, nor could he see the formations that had not been broken. In his eyes, there was only the metal steel. and the speed at which his chest rose and fell became somewhat hurried. Chapter 1148. In the hallucinatory Immortal City, Yu Qianqiu, who was disguised as Niu Yud, casually walked to Nongzhu's stall. He picked up a horse sculpture and clicked his tongue. Oh my God! There was actually such a marvelous sculpture in this world. He wondered which extraordinary person had created it. Boss, how many spirit stones are you selling it for? He smiled wretchedly. Nongzhu looked at him as if he was a dead man. She sat there motionlessly and said, "It is rare to see a man like you. Why don't you tell me what's so good about the things in my stall? If you really know what's good about them, I will give them to you for free." His words seemed to be saying, praise me as much as you can. I want to see what you can boast about." Yu Qianqiu could see that this old handsome man had a problem with him. Forget it, he would not argue with him now. He would ask Jade Flower Fairy to deal with him when he returned. Just when he was about to say something to comfort him, there was a sudden commotion in the square. Looking back, he found that many disciples of the Heartless Palace had come to the square and were talking passionately. What's going on? Yu Qianqiu held the horse sculpture in his arms and got back to business. However, he was transmitting his voice secretly. Nongzhu also understood that it was not the time to be angry. She explained angrily. After the Immortal Underworld and the Underworld established the Immortal Underworld Demon-Slaying Alliance, the Heartless Palace established the Rogue Cultivators Alliance from all over the Immortal World. The gimmick was that they took out a quota of 1,000 true disciples of the Heartless Palace and prepared to reward them to the Rogue Cultivators who made great contributions to the Immortal Underworld Demon-Slaying Alliance. It was said that the Rogue Cultivators who made great contributions could join the Heartless Palace and practice the sword-drawing movement of the Heartless Palace. Once this gimmick was taken out, the Rogue Cultivators in the Immortal World rushed to join. I heard that 2 to 3 million people have been gathered to compete for the 1,000 quota. The Rogue Cultivators Alliance? Yu Qianqiu was startled. He was quite familiar with this name. He had once been the leader of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance in the cultivation world, so he didn't find it strange that these rogue cultivators would flock to him like a flock of ducks. He nodded slightly and said, "Independent cultivators do not have a good life. Being able to join the Heartless Palace and obtain the true legacy of the Heartless Palace's sword-drawing technique is indeed a chance to change one's fate. If it were me, I would take the gamble. Anyway, no one knows you now. You can give it a try," Nongzhu said sarcastically. Yu Qianqiu caressed the horse sculpture in his arms and chuckled. "Forget it. If the people from the Heartless Palace know it's me, don't fight me to the death." Oh, Nongzhu made a long oh sound and said, "I forgot to tell you something. Wang Qing has publicly announced that the grudge between you and the Heartless Palace has been written off." He told Nongzhu about how Yu Qianqiu called the police in time and resolved the crisis. Then Wang Qing told him about how he took credit for the incident and what he heard recently. Is there such a good thing? Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He looked around and said, "That's what I said." Looking at the situation in the hallucination Immortal City, I know that Jintai and Baiqi have not succeeded. Otherwise, the hallucination Immortal City would not be so lively when the diabolism came. That's why I said you can give it a try. It's not bad to get the sword-drawing technique of the Heartless Palace. Nongzhu teased. Come on. How could the Heartless Palace divulge the cultivation method of the sword-drawing technique so easily? At most, they only divulged the first technique. But now, I can buy some things in the hallucination Immortal City and exchange all the things that those people in the human world have. You really brought all the cultivators in the human world here. Nongzhu was stunned. Yu Qianqiu replied with an N. He put down the horse sculpture in his hand and walked into the crowd. He started to buy all the cheap things in the stalls. After all, no matter how cheap they were still better than the ordinary things in the human world. The key was that it was not practical to buy a lot of high-grade things. Moreover, millions of people were using high-grade things, and he did not have the financial resources to do so. He could only make do with what he had. After he bought thousands of low-grade flying swords in the stalls, he immediately attracted the attention of the mythical Fire Palace's disciples. They followed behind him. When they saw that he had nothing to buy, a red-robed disciple squeezed to his side and cupped his hands. I'm a disciple of the mythical fire palace. Yu Qianqiu turned and looked at him. He frowned and said, What's the matter? It seems that you want to buy a lot of all kinds of low-grade immortal equipment. My mythical fire palace is the #1 blacksmith sect in the 3 realms. The red-robed disciple smiled and said, If you want to buy a lot, my mythical fire palace has a lot of stock. If you buy a lot, it will be cheaper. It will save you time and effort compared to you buying here and there. What do you think? It seemed like he was a disciple of the mythical fire palace who was trying to attract business. Yu Qianqiu frowned. How could he have forgotten about the mythical fire palace? This daddy's grudge with the Heartless Palace had already been written off. He could totally go to the mythical fire palace to buy things openly. Why was there a need to waste time here? Good. It's good that it's cheaper. Yu Qianqiu nodded and smiled. The red-robed disciple immediately stretched out his hand and invited, Sir, please follow me. The 2 of them flew out of the crowd. Not long later, they landed at the entrance of the mythical fire palace's branch. Actually, Yu Qianqiu was very familiar with this place. He had been here many times. However, in the past, he would usually directly enter the back hall to look for Elder Huolianqing. However, this red-robed disciple led him to a small room at the side and invited him to sit down and have some tea. After he left and returned, he respectfully brought an old man with him. The old man clearly didn't think that this little disciple could attract any big customers. He walked in with his hands behind his back. When he realized that he couldn't see through Yu Qianqiu's cultivation, his expression became more serious. He cupped his hands and sat opposite of Yu Qianqiu. He asked, I'm Li Zhen. How should I address you? Niuyud. Yu Qianqiu held the teacup and replied. Li Zhen frowned and thought about it. He realized that he had never heard of this person before. However, he didn't mind it. He laughed and said, I heard from the disciple that you want to buy all kinds of low-tier immortal equipment in bulk. I wonder what kind of low-tier immortal equipment you want and how many do you want? Yu Qianqiu sat there and drank a mouthful of tea. He then smiled faintly and said, I want flying swords. I don't want all low-tier ones. I want high-tier ones too. However, I heard from him that it would be cheaper to buy them in bulk. Don't cheat me. He pointed at the little disciple who was standing with his hands behind his back. There's naturally a discount if you buy in bulk. He's right, Li Zhen said with a face full of smiles. Can you give me a specific number? Yu Qianqiu put down the teacup and said solemnly, I want as much as you have. You must be joking. Li Zhen laughed. He used his laughter to reevaluate Yu Qianqiu. He was wondering if Yu Qianqiu really had the financial resources to buy as much as he had. One had to know that mythical fire palace had been in the immortal realm for so many years. There were countless low-tier flying swords that their disciples had refined. Just this branch alone had a backlog of millions of them. If they could really sell them all, it would really be a big business. However, who would want so much trash if they had the financial resources? Do I look like I'm joking? Yu Qianqiu asked coldly. Haha. Of course it's better if it's true. Li Zhen twirled his white beard as he chuckled. There are 9 grades of immortal artifacts. Grade 1 is 1 divine grade spirit stone. Grade 2 is 100. Grade 3 is 10,000. Grade 4 is 1 million. And grade 5 is 100 million. These are the market prices. If Honored Sir wants to buy in bulk, the price can be negotiated. As for grade 6 and above, any one of them would easily cost tens of billions of divine grade spirit stones. Most of them are custom made and the price is not something I can decide. Our branch does have a few in stock. If Honored Sire is really sincere in purchasing in large quantities, I can introduce you to the elder in charge of the branch. The price was the market price. Yu Qianqiu's eyes rolled as he pondered. Then he asked again, report me the stock, I'll buy according to the amount of money I have. He's for real this time. Li Zhen's spirit rose, straightening his back as he said, there are about 2 million grade 1 immortal artifacts in the branch, 400,000 grade 2 immortal artifacts, 200,000 grade 3 immortal artifacts, close to 10,000 grade 4 immortal artifacts, 7 to 800 grade 5 immortal artifacts, and 11 grade 6 immortal artifacts. May I know which grade honored sir is looking for, and how many do you need? Yu Qianqiu nodded thoughtfully at Li Zhen's words. Estimating, just 11 grade 6 immortal artifacts would cost more than 100 billion divine grade spirit stones. And buying all the grades would cost at least 200 billion divine grade spirit stones. The total amount of spirit stones he had now was less than 80 billion, and he still needed to keep some spirit stones in reserve. Yet he wanted to buy all the high-grade immortal artifacts. Truly, even the cleverest housewife couldn't cook a meal without rice. After pondering for a while, Yu Qianqiu's mouth twitched. I only want 1 million grade 1 immortal artifacts. Give me as many flying swords as possible. As for the rest, I want all the grade 2, 3, 4, 5, and grade 6 immortal artifacts. The two people in front of him exchanged a glance. Li Zhen coughed lightly. He didn't expect it to be such a large sum. His previous estimate was 100,000, so he forced a smile. Honored sir is aware that just these items alone would cost more than 200 billion divine grade spirit stones. Of course, I'm not doubting honored sir's wealth, but may I ask, what are you planning to do with such a large sum? Otherwise, you should know that if a large amount of things were to flow to the netherworld, it would be the same as cutting off other sects' source of income, and it would be hard for my mythical fire palace to explain to the other sections. He really couldn't figure out who else in the immortal world would want so many immortal artifacts at once. All the sects had an agreement. The mythical fire palace couldn't monopolize the netherworld's business, just because of their reputation in artifact forging. This amount was a little too large. Most importantly, he was worried about this Niu Yud's wealth. You don't need to care about this, forget it. Those 2 million plus grade 1 immortal artifacts, I want all of them. Yu Qianqiu thought that it was better to be prepared. Since he was going to do something immoral, he couldn't care less about those 1 million plus grade 1 immortal artifacts. Thus, he decisively made his decision. His hand reached into his clothes and pulled out a bunch of storage bracelets. The two people in front of him were stunned. They couldn't imagine how Huang Xiaolong had so many storage bracelets on him. Why didn't they notice it earlier? Pa! Yu Qianqiu casually pulled out a storage bracelet, slapping it on the table, his voice resonant. Enough nonsense. I'm here to buy things, you're here to sell things. This is 10 billion divine grade spirit stones as a deposit, to show my sincerity. If you really want to do this business, take the deposit, and the goods will be delivered at the same time. Don't waste my time with useless words. If you can't do it, let someone in charge make the final decision. Chapter 1149. Without even seeing the goods, Huang Xiaolong directly took out 10 billion divine grade spirit stones as a deposit. What a generous and wealthy buyer. The two people on the other side were stunned. They had seen rich and overbearing people, but they had never seen someone who didn't take money seriously. Li Zhen signaled the red-clothed disciple with his eyes, and the latter respectfully walked up to Yu Qianqiu, taking the storage bracelet from him. Li Zhen scanned the storage bracelet with his divine sense, and discovered that it was filled to the brim with divine-grade spirit stones. There were indeed 10 billion of them. Then he looked up at the huge storage bracelets in Yu Qianqiu's hands. If there were 10 billion in each storage bracelet, then he should have at least 1 trillion in his hands. My goodness, I've really met a big buyer. Li Zhen's eyes lit up as he held the storage bracelet in his hand. He stood up and bowed to Yu Qianqiu. Since you're so sincere, although I can't make the decision on my own, I'll have to report to the town elder and try my best to close the deal. Please wait for a moment, I'll be back soon. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand disapprovingly, indicating for him to leave quickly and return quickly. Li Zhen raised his hand again to ask him to wait for a moment, then left quickly. In the back hall, Hu Lianqing took the storage bangle from Li Zhen and checked it. After confirming the number, he returned it and frowned slightly. You purchased such a large number of celestial artifacts in one go. You didn't ask him about the purpose of the purchase? I did, but he refused to tell me. Li Zhen thought about it and said, I suspect that he's buying for the underworld, so I don't dare to agree. Netherworld? Indeed, only the netherworld can use up such a large number of low-grade immortal artifacts at once. If it was in the past, the mythical fire palace wouldn't have dared to sell so many weapons to the netherworld at one go. But ever since Wang Qing and his son gained power, for some unknown reason, the sect actually hinted to him to loosen the restrictions on sales to the netherworld. He was also planning for this matter, but he didn't expect that a large buyer would come knocking on his door. After some thought, Hu Lianqing said, "Sell it to him." Then he added, "Since he's a big buyer, invite him to my place. Then you go and check out the things he wants and bring them over. Try to round it up as much as possible, and leave the odd bits to maintain the popularity of the daily business." "Yes. But elder." Li Zhen was a little hesitant. "If we do this, it'll be the equivalent of emptying the branch. The Heartless Palace has already reserved 3 million low-grade immortal artifacts for the newly formed Itinerant Cultivator Alliance. If we give them all at once, what if the Heartless Palace comes to collect the goods, and we can't hand them over?" Hu Lianqing waved his hand disapprovingly. "That's not a problem. I'll immediately contact the sect, and get them to send those low-grade immortal artifacts over as soon as possible. It'll be just nice to get rid of most of the useless things in the sect. This is a good thing. If the Heartless Palace comes to collect the goods, I'll explain. Just do as I say." Li Zhen naturally accepted the order, and soon brought Yu Qianqiu over. Hu Lianqing looked at him and found that he couldn't see through his cultivation, so he invited him to sit down and have some tea. Then he asked him some questions. Yu Qianqiu sat there calmly and pretended not to know him. Seeing that he couldn't get anything out of him, Hu Lianqing said some insignificant things to kill time. It didn't take long for Li Zhen to check the number of the items. Li Zhen only needed to confirm the number of the items before he took out 6 storage bracelets and placed them on the tea table in front of Yu Qianqiu. He explained, 2 million pieces of first-grade celestial artifacts, 400,000 pieces of second-grade celestial artifacts, 200,000 pieces of third-grade celestial artifacts, 10,000 pieces of fourth-grade celestial artifacts, 800 pieces of fifth-grade celestial artifacts, and 11 pieces of sixth-grade celestial artifacts. Yu Qianqiu did not check them carefully. He just took each of the 6 storage bracelets and quickly checked the amount inside. Then he took them all in his hand and asked, "No need to count. I trust the reputation of the mythical fire palace. How many spirit stones do you need in total?" It was rare to see such a straightforward customer. Li Zhen smiled respectfully at Huang Xiaolong. "According to the market price, the total value is 202,042 million divine-grade spirit stones, not a piece more, not a piece less." Bang! Yu Qianqiu slammed the table, causing the teacups on the table to shatter into pieces. His eyes widened in anger as he snapped, "This can't be right. Why is it according to the market price again? Didn't you say that there would be a discount? Is this how your mythical fire palace conducts business?" Such a huge commotion startled several disciples who rushed in from outside. Hu Lianqing and Li Zhen were stunned for a moment, thinking that they had run into some troublemaker. But when they heard the reason for Huang Xiaolong's anger, they shook their heads with a wry smile. This person might be straightforward, but his temper was truly fiery. He simply couldn't tolerate a grain of sand in his eyes. Wasn't it obvious that he hadn't finished his words? Hu Lianqing waved his hand at the disciples who rushed in. "It's none of your business, just a small misunderstanding. All of you leave." After the disciples left, Hu Lianqing didn't seem to mind that they had broken his things. He smiled amiably at Yu Qianqiu. "Brother Niu has misunderstood. Since we said that there will be a discount, we can sit down and discuss the price." Then he turned to Li Zhen and said, "Serve Brother Niu some tea. Let Brother Niu calm down." A short while later, the broken things were cleaned up, and a new cup of tea was placed on the table. Yu Qianqiu sat down resentfully, placing the 6 storage bracelets back on the table. He harumphed coldly. "It seems like I've misunderstood. I wonder how much discount Elder Hua is prepared to give me?" Hu Lianqing revealed a warm smile, as if the customer was God. "How about this? We'll give Brother Niu 20 billion divine-grade spirit stones. Forget about the odd bits. Just take it that the 2 million grade 1 immortal artifacts and 400,000 grade 2 immortal artifacts are free gifts. What does Brother Niu think?" "Are you joking?" Over 200 billion divine-grade spirit stones. And you're only offering a discount of 42 million divine-grade spirit stones? Yu Qianqiu jumped to his feet with a furious expression, as if he was fooled. His hand reached out to Li Jun. This is intolerable. Return 10 billion divine-grade spirit stones to me. I don't want to buy any more. Li Jun's expression stiffened, noticing that the other side wasn't as generous as he had imagined. Huo Lianqing smiled awkwardly. Brother Niu, don't be in such a hurry, name a suitable price. Yu Qianqiu retracted his hand hearing Huo Lianqing's words. He crossed his fingers and pondered for a while, then extended 2 fingers toward Huo Lianqing and Huo Lianqing. Fixed price, 200 billion divine-grade spirit stones. The moment Huang Xiaolong said that, Huo Lianqing's smile froze. Cutting out 2 billion divine-grade spirit stones in one go. What was the difference between this and robbery? Huo Lianqing's face sank. Brother Niu, you're not sincere, ah. Huo Lianqing also extended 2 fingers, emphasizing each word clearly. 200 million. I'll give Brother Niu another 200 million divine-grade spirit stones. This is the limit of what I can decide. A total of 201. 8 billion. Although he had already made a big concession, little did he know that even if he agreed to the other side's offer of 200 billion divine-grade spirit stones, Yu Qianqiu wouldn't buy it. Yu Qianqiu would think twice before lowering the price by another 2 billion, forcing the other side to disagree. Yu Qianqiu sneered, then extended his hand toward Li Jun. Return the 10 billion divine-grade spirit stones to me. Li Jun looked weakly at Huo Lianqing, but Huo Lianqing's face darkened. Brother Niu, you'd better think it through. Other than my mythical fire palace, you won't be able to find another place in the 3 worlds with such a favorable price. If Brother Niu is really sincere, I'll treat it as a friend and give you another 100 million discount. What does Brother Niu think? Didn't you just say that a discount of 200 million is the limit of what you can decide? Now you're going back on your words and offering another 100 million? Yu Qianqiu chuckled coldly. Little do you know that I'm a person who values character the most when doing business. If it's something I like, even if it's another 10 billion, I'm still willing. Huo Lianqing was depressed. Wasn't this how business was conducted? Are you saying that I'm not pleasing to the eye? Before Huo Lianqing could say anything, Yu Qianqiu flicked his sleeves and strode out, saying as he walked, It's an insult to my character to continue talking nonsense with you. In any case, your hands are already dirty after the 10 billion. It's beneath me to ask for it back. You can keep it and spend it slowly. Disdain was written all over his face as he strode away. Listening to Huang Xiaolong's words, it sounded like he was putting himself on a pedestal, giving others the impression that he was a misophobe. Huo Lianqing and Li Jun exchanged a glance. This was the first time they met such a strange person. Li Jun blinked for a moment. Elder, do you want this disciple to chase him back and have a talk? Do you think you can come to an agreement with this kind of person? Huo Lianqing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I've seen all kinds of people in my life, but not this kind of person. He really has too much money and nowhere to spend it. But 10 billion divine-grade spirit stones is not a small amount, so leave it for now. If one day he regrets it and comes back to ask for it, we still have to return it to him. After all, no amount of money can exchange for our mythical fire palace's golden reputation. This disciple understands. Li Jun saluted respectfully, then put away the 6 storage bracelets on the table, turned around and left. However, a short while later, Li Jun ran back in a flustered manner, his voice anxious. Not good. Not good. Elder, we've been tricked. Huo Lianqing frowned. How many times have I told you to stay calm? What happened? Tell me slowly. What are you panicking for? Li Jun quickly and anxiously recounted the matter. It turned out that when he brought the items into the storage, according to the rules, the disciples who entered the storage room had to check the items again. Otherwise, if something was missing, the disciples who entered the storage room wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. In the end, other than 1 storage bracelet with 10 billion divine-grade spirit stones inside, the other 6 were empty. Li Jun was not a fool. A moment's thought told him that someone had swapped the storage bracelets. Hearing this, Huo Lianqing was dumbstruck. Just now, when the items were placed back on the table, he had been keeping a close watch on them. There shouldn't have been a chance to swap them out. Ah! Could it be that when the other party smashed the table? You stupid pig! Who did you bring? If more than 200 billion worth of treasures are gone just like that, you and I can forget about having a good life. Hurry up and send people out to search. Huo Lianqing bellowed, taking the lead and dashed out in a hurry. Chapter 1150. The entire Lifefire Palace's branch instantly moved out in full force, swiftly searching the entire illusionary Immortal City. They even searched the area within 100 miles of the illusionary Immortal City. However, how could they still find Niu Yud's shadow? Even a fool would know that after scamming someone, they had to flee as fast as they could. In addition, Niu Yud was a swindler who dared to come to the Lifefire Palace to commit fraud. They didn't find him, but the commotion caused the people of the city to go around trying to find out what exactly happened. The Lifefire Palace actually mobilized so many people. After that, he saw many Lifefire Palace's disciples stopping people in the central plaza, interrogating them one by one. Their questions were all about whether they had seen a person named Niu Yud who looked like that before. When the investigation reached Nongzhu's stall, Nongzhu was speechless. Others might not know Niu Yud, but it would be strange if he said he didn't. However, he also didn't know what Yu Qianqiu had done. But based on his understanding of Yu Qianqiu, once there was a commotion involving that brat, he would definitely be up to no good. Hence, he shook his head and said he didn't know him. It was fine if he didn't know him, he couldn't help but ask, what happened? The Lifefire Palace's disciple coldly snorted. Don't ask what you shouldn't ask. Hence, Nongzhu could only shut his mouth. However, there was no impermeable wall in the world. The pitiful Huo Lianqing discovered that his losses were too great. He basically had no way to report to his sect. He could only hurriedly seek help from the other major sects to capture Niu Yud. In truth, he also suspected that Niu Yud was using a fake name, who would use a real name to commit fraud. For a period of time, the various sects more or less gave face to Huo Lianqing, sending many people to search everywhere. They even sent orders back to their sects to inform their people to take note of this. After all, everyone wanted to know who this Niu Yud was exactly. He actually dared to deceive the Lifefire Palace. Also, under the situation where there was no harm, if they captured Niu Yud, it would be equivalent to the Lifefire Palace owing them a favor. In this case, the more people there were, the more mouths there would be. What happened naturally couldn't be concealed. When everyone knew that it was someone who cheated the Lifefire Palace of over 200 billion worth of treasures, the entire hallucinatory Immortal City was in an uproar. Some scolded that Niu Yud for being immoral, some praised that Niu Yud for having guts. Therefore, many people jokingly said that this swindler's name was too perfect. Why not call him Wicked Niu or Gutsy Niu? Wouldn't calling Niu Yud be smacking the face of the Lifefire Palace? Hearing this news, Nongzhu was stunned for a long time. The muscles on her face couldn't stop twitching. She didn't expect that the guy would do such a big thing in the blink of an eye. It seemed that there was really nothing in this world that he didn't dare to do. Moreover, he was 100% sure that it was Yu Qianqiu who did it, because Yu Qianqiu had said before he left that he wanted to change the weapons of a large group of his subordinates. But didn't he say he was going shopping? How did it become a scam? Nongzhu couldn't understand how Yu Qianqiu managed to scam them. Could it be that the people of the Lifefire Palace were all fools? How could they scam an item worth over 200 billion just like that? Damn it! It must be Huo Lianqing scolding me. I've already given you 10 billion. Your Lifefire Palace is rich and powerful. Would it kill me to earn a little more? In the conference room of the Divine Ruin Realm, Yu Qianqiu rubbed his itchy nose and scolded. However, seeing the 6 storage bracelets on the conference table, he immediately became spirited again. Previously, he was still thinking about how to solve the problem of weapons for millions of people. He went to the fantasy Immortal City with the goal of buying as many as he could. Who would have thought that he would solve the problem at once so quickly? Moreover, there was still enough left. It was enough for one person to give 2 bracelets. Just thinking about it made him admire himself. However, he felt a little emotional. He thought that he didn't need to do such things anymore at this point. He didn't expect that some things could be solved with the methods of the Jianghu. However, he really couldn't use it in the future. At the very least, he had to use it sparingly. If he used it too much, he would be embarrassed. Having solved another big problem, he instantly felt a lot more relaxed. He sat on the chair and crossed his legs on the table. He started to remove Niu Yud's mask. When he put away the mask, he couldn't help but open it and sigh. Exchanging you for about 200 billion is worth it. You probably won't be able to show your face in the future. He put away the mask with a sigh. He wasn't worried that someone would reveal his identity as Niu Yud. After all, not many people in the Immortal and Netherworld knew about it. Even if he was exposed, he could completely refuse to admit it without any solid evidence. At this moment, Zhang Peng walked in quickly and bowed. "Master, what's the matter?" Yu Qianqiu put down his crossed legs and pointed to the 6 storage bracelets on the table. These storage bracelets have 11 grade, 6 immortal artifacts, 800 grade, 5 immortal artifacts, 10,000 grade, 4 immortal artifacts, 200,000 grade, 3 immortal artifacts, 400,000 grade, 2 immortal artifacts, and 2 million grade, 1 immortal artifacts. Take them and decide whether to give them to them. So many. Zhang Peng was shocked. He picked up the 6 storage bracelets and examined them. He couldn't help but gasp. He couldn't imagine where his master had gotten so many celestial artifacts. The number was too huge. He had heard from the commanders of the various armies about the prices of celestial artifacts of various grades in the celestial world. How many spirit stones would it cost to buy these things? Zhang Peng looked at his master with admiration. At least, he didn't have the ability to get so many immortal artifacts in one go. Yu Qianqiu, who was changing his clothes, naturally wouldn't tell his disciple that he had cheated them. After changing his clothes, he disappeared. In the valley outside the illusionary immortal city, Yu Qianqiu had just flown into the air when he saw 3 mythical fire palace disciples surrounding him and sizing him up. Yu Qianqiu thought that the matter had probably been exposed. On the surface, he snorted coldly. "So it's mythical fire palace disciples. What do you want?" "He's the World Commerce Association's sect leader, Yu Qianqiu." One of them whispered to his left and right. Obviously, he had seen Yu Qianqiu before. The 3 of them clasped their hands and bowed. "We're pursuing the fugitive. Sorry to disturb sect leader Yu." Then, they quickly flew away. Yu Qianqiu flicked his sleeves and continued flying towards the illusionary immortal city. Now that the grudge between him and Heartless Palace had been resolved, he could finally show his face openly. After he entered the illusionary immortal city, it immediately caused a commotion. The news of Yu Qianqiu's return spread rapidly. As for Yu Qianqiu himself, he felt as if he, Huan-san, had returned to his previous life. He swaggered through the market, constantly looking around and asking questions at the various stalls. He pretended to unknowingly walk to the front of Nongzhu's stall to check out the items on display. Nongzhu was at a loss for words watching Huang Xiaolong fiddling with the sculptures. In the end, she couldn't help but send a voice transmission to Huang Xiaolong. "Brat, you're too black-hearted. You swindled over 200 billion immortal artifacts from the Lifefire Palace. How do you want Huo Lianqing and the rest to establish themselves in the Lifefire Palace in the future? Don't listen to those rumors. I spent 10 billion divine-grade spirit stones to buy those immortal artifacts. How did it turn into swindling in your mouth? This sect leader is rich. Why would I need to swindle others?" Yu Qianqiu retorted disdainfully. "Fine. You have guts. 10 billion divine-grade spirit stones can buy over 200 billion immortal artifacts. If there's a chance, I'd like to see how you do it." Nongzhu couldn't be bothered to argue with Huang Xiaolong anymore. She changed the topic. "You've just done something bad. Why didn't you go and lay low for a while? What are you doing here?" Yu Qianqiu stared at the mountain peak in the distance. A light flickered in his eyes as he said, "I'm considering if I should rebuild the World Commerce Hall. That way, I won't need to hide when I go out to gather information. It's just like you and me talking here, it's so inconvenient. Sooner or later, people will start to suspect you." Just as he finished speaking, bright lights shot out from the various sects, flying up to the sky. Cries of fear and panic came from afar, spreading like the tide. "Not good. Jin Taihe and Bai Qi used a scheme to stop Wang Qing and Wu Feng from entering the netherworld. Jin Taihe is delaying Wang Qing and Wu Feng in the netherworld, while Bai Qi has set up a grand formation at the entrance to the immortal netherworld. Bai Qi is killing his way to the devil world. No one can stop him. It's over. The devil world's passage is about to be opened by Bai Qi. Everyone quickly run. All sorts of rumors and slanders started to spread everywhere. The entire illusory immortal city was in a mess. Panicked merchants and peddlers quickly packed their things and flew away. Yu Qianqiu and Nongzhu glanced at each other, then looked around with an unusually solemn look. That's mine. Ah. There were already people taking advantage of the situation. Screams could be heard from time to time. They took advantage of the chaos to kill people, steal their things and run. Quickly pack your things and find a place to hide. The peddler beside Nongzhu had gotten to know Nongzhu over the past few days, and kindly reminded her. He had already packed his things and flew into the sky. Nongzhu looked at Yu Qianqiu. She didn't need to transmit her voice and said directly, "It looks like you have to put aside the matter of rebuilding the World Commerce Hall. What do you plan to do now?" Yu Qianqiu coldly looked around at the chaos and said slowly in a low voice, "I didn't expect Wang Qing and his son to not be able to stop Jin Tai and Bai Qi. What will come will come. I have no other choice now. I can only take it one step at a time." In just a short while, the entire hallucinatory immortal city was completely empty. The bustling city of the past had become windy in the blink of an eye. Only the two of them stood in the square with cold expressions. Once the demonic path returned to the three realms, who knew where the peddlers could hide? At the entrance of the demon realm's seal in the immortal realm, three figures appeared in the enlarged obsidian light mirror. The imposing demon monarch three knights sat on the blood-jade throne, his scarlet cloak hanging halfway down his left leg. His tiger-like eyes shone with a demonic red light. To the left of the blood-jade throne was Yan Juixing in black. To the right was Eunuch Li in white. The three of them stared coldly at Bai Qi. Before Bai Qi could greet him, Demon King Three Knights shouted, "Bai Qi, how dare you make fun of me?" "Demon King, please calm down." In fear and trepidation, Bai Qi explained the reason why he and Jin Tai had delayed opening the passageway to the demon realm, and reported, "I am already at the entrance of the passageway between the immortal realm and the demon realm, and can open the passageway to the demon realm at any time. Demon Monarch, please be prepared, otherwise, I'm afraid that something unexpected will happen." Hearing this, Demon King Three Knights knew that the devil world was about to open. He couldn't help but become excited. He closed his eyes and slowly asked, "Who is waiting at the entrance to the immortal world?" Eunuch Li immediately faced him and bowed slightly. "It's the 100,000 demonic path army led by the demon king Qing Tian." Chapter 1151. Bai Qi, how long do you need to unseal the demon world? Demon King Three Knights' eyes slowly opened, revealing a blood-red glow. An hour is enough for this subordinate, but this subordinate is worried that Wang Qing and his son will arrive at any moment. If the demon world army doesn't come out in time, this subordinate is afraid that something will happen. Seeing that the demon world was about to open and the demonic path was about to return to the three realms, Bai Qi's attitude became even more respectful. At the same time, he was hesitating. The reason why he didn't open the passage to the demon world first was because he wanted to see Demon King Three Knights' attitude before making a final decision. After all, this was not a small matter. He couldn't afford to lose. Demon King Three Knights seemed to guess what he was thinking and said slowly and heavily, "After this matter is successful, this sovereign will keep his promise. The underworld will still be controlled by you, Bai Qi, on behalf of the demonic path. But if you dare to lie to me, there are some things that I might as well tell you. Even if you don't open the passage to the demon world, this sovereign's return to the three realms is only a matter of time, so do as you see fit." Hearing this, Bai Qi was shocked. He knew that although Demon King Three Knight was a demonic cultivator, he was a supreme demonic cultivator who thought highly of himself. There was no need for him to lie to him. He must have already found a way to open the passage to the demon world. But the time was not right yet. He said respectfully, "This subordinate doesn't dare." Demon King 3 Knight looked straight at Bai Qi and suddenly shouted in a loud voice. Quickly open the passage to the demon world, and welcome the demonic path's army back to the 3 realms. Yes. Bai Qi accepted the order fearfully, and raised his hand to put away the obsidian light mirror floating in front of him. The image in front of him disappeared. Demon King 3 Knight suddenly stood up, and looked outside the tall palace gate. His decisive voice resounded through the entire mountain peak. Send my order to Qing Tian. The passage between the immortal world and demon world is about to open. Tell her to lead the army and prepare to set off at any time. Tell her that after entering the immortal world, everything else has nothing to do with her. Tell her to guard the passage to the demon world at all costs, and welcome the demonic path's army. If she dares to ruin my plans, have her head come to see me. Send my order to Li Tian, Ho Tu Xiangrong, Bahu Shanduan Shuang Hanba, Mengyan, Tunhai, Emoluo, Yao Erlang, and the other demon kings to lead their armies to the passage to the immortal world. Erlang will lead the army to assist Qing Tian after entering the immortal world and demon world. Erlang will lead the army and help to guard the passage. Everyone else, Dantian and Tian will need to stay to wait. Qi and will to enter the passage. Demon will. Enqing. If anyone dares to ruin my plans, kill. Send my order to Qing Qiu, Di Lang Rushing Fury, Ing Long, Yu Guang, Ing Zhao Qi Mei Shen Hui Tian Ho, Snake Xiu Tsang Lei Ba Yin, and the other demon kings to gather at the passage between the immortal world and the nether world. Once the passage opens, immediately enter the nether world to meet up with the receiving army. Leave Hanba and Song Lei to guard the passage, then split into 2 groups. One group will sweep the enemies in the nether world, and the other in the immortal world. If anyone dares to disobey my orders, kill them, no matter who they are. Send my order to the other demon kings to lead their armies to guard the demon world and wait for further orders. If anyone dares to cause trouble, kill them without mercy. Send my order to the demon kings. First conquer the immortal world and the nether world, then conquer the 72 worlds of the human world. After conquering the world in one fell swoop, of the 72 worlds of the human world, I will divide 36 worlds and give them to the 36 demon kings as rewards. If there are any who fail in battle, their right to receive rewards will be revoked. Demon King 3 Knights brazenly gave out orders. Yan Juexing, who stood solemnly to the side, had a ferocious excitement in his eyes. Eunuch Li, who was dressed in white robes and a white hat, memorized all the orders and quickly passed them down. In the howling wind, Bai Qi, who stood in front of the seal to the demon world, had his clothes fluttering. His spotless feet were actually covered in dirt. He looked at the iron seal in front of him with a dazed expression. No one knew what he was thinking. Why haven't Wang Qing and Wu Feng come yet? Anxious voices faintly came from afar. Finally, a trace of hatred flashed across Bai Qi's face. He quickly raised the obsidian underworld light mirror in his hand. An array of black light shone on the iron seal. The black light was uneven and rapidly pulsed. The densely packed and strange runes on the iron seal suddenly began to move slowly like tadpoles. Finally, they gradually turned into a cheerful swimming motion, condensing into a spiraling whirlpool. The whirlpool slowly sank deeper into the mountain. Then it cracked, collapsed, and caved in bit by bit. Finally, the entire iron seal was sucked into the belly of the mountain. With a loud rumbling sound, it turned into a rotating black light. The passageway between the immortal realm and the demonic realm that had been sealed for countless years was finally reopened. Bai Qi stood there in a daze. Behind him, there were countless sorrowful cries and screams, but at this moment he could not hear anything. In his ears, there was only the sound of the opening of the passage to the demon world. And in his eyes, there was only the spiraling black light. Not long after, a group of green figures continuously shot out from the spiraling black light. Their joyful cheers and screams resounded through the sky, and also woke up the dazed Bai Qi. Seeing countless green-clothed monsters quickly occupy the favorable terrain around the exit, he did not know how many people had come out. He could only see that the dense crowd was still expanding in all directions, and the messy formation behind the mountain was also rapidly being nibbled away by the crowd. After the last group of green-clothed people came out, the thousands of people quickly split into two sides in an 8 shape. No one went to disturb Bai Qi, who was standing in the middle. They turned a blind eye to him, as if he did not exist. However, Bai Qi's gaze suddenly became solemn, and he stared closely at the spiraling black light. He saw a beautiful figure flash out, with a curvaceous waist and a green long dress trailing behind her. A beautiful woman, who was as beautiful as a flower, leisurely walked over with her bright eyes, and finally stopped outside the cave. She opened her naked arms and gently closed her eyes, as if she wanted to embrace the whole world. Her red lips moved, and she murmured, "I didn't think I could return to the celestial world again. I haven't breathed in the air of the celestial world for a long time, so fragrant." The expression on her face was incomparably enjoyable and intoxicated. "Qing Tian, why are you the only one out? Where are the others?" Bai Qi's voice broke the beautiful woman's beautiful dream. From his tone and expression, he seemed to be an old acquaintance of this beautiful woman. This woman was one of the 36 great demon kings under Demon Monarch 3 Knights, Qing Tian, Great Demon King. The beautiful woman slowly opened her eyes, and a trace of fierceness flashed in her gaze as she stared at Bai Qi, which was immediately filled with playfulness. She smiled brightly and said, "So it's you, Bai Qi?" She leisurely walked to Bai Qi's side with her green long dress, and walked a few rounds around Bai Qi with interest. As she examined him, she chuckled and said, "If you knew it would be like this, why did you do it in the first place?" Bai Qi suddenly turned his hand and directly grabbed onto the swan-like fair and slender neck of the Qing Tian. He pulled her in front of him and tightly clasped her neck. He snorted coldly and said, "What I do is my own business. I don't need you to teach me. Let me ask you, why are you the only one out? Where are the others?" Seeing his old acquaintance, his actions seemed to have returned to the turbulent era. Seeing that he actually dared to make a move against the Qing Tian, Great Demon King, the green-clothed people on both sides instantly went into an uproar and were about to attack. The Qing Tian, Great Demon King, whose neck was being clasped, raised his hand slightly and stopped his subordinates from making a move. He then grabbed Bai Qi's wrist and pushed it away. The smile on his face did not change as he said, "What are you so anxious about? The Demon Monarch has already summoned the 12 Great Demon Kings to lead the army here. My mission is to guard the passage between the Celestial Realm and the Demon Realm, and welcome the arrival of the army. But what are you afraid of?" She leisurely walked past Bai Qi, and her bright eyes stared sharply at the silhouettes of the Celestial Realm people in the distance. She said confidently, "I want to see what kind of people can scare you, Bai Qi." She lightly waved her jade arm, and pointed to the distance. She said lazily, "Blockhead, you lead 10,000 people and eliminate those sneaky Celestial Realm people." Her tone was so calm. Yes. A strange person wearing a loose green robe with a protruding forehead happily accepted the order. He waved his coarse hand that was like a cattail leaf fan, and a group of people in green robes rushed after him. The disciples of the various sects in the distance saw that the demon sect had already launched an attack, and they immediately scattered. They did not even block the attack before they all ran for their lives. This made the Qing Tian, Great Demon King, chuckle, like a silver bell. He said, "As expected, you are still so weak. I really don't understand how you could be defeated by these people. Don't be too happy too early. These are all people from the various sects who can't be seen in public. If the Celestial Realm and the Netherworld were really so weak, the Demon Monarch would have already unified the 3 realms." Bai Qi turned around and looked at the people who were chasing in the distance. "If it wasn't for you and the Vajra slave, the Demon Monarch would have naturally unified the 3 realms." The Qing Tian turned around and looked at him. She stretched out a slender finger and pointed it at Bai Qi's chest. She said, "What a pity. The Demon Monarch just had to listen to those lies. He came up with some stupid strategy to appease the Demon Monarch. He wanted to achieve long-term peace and created you and the Vajra slave to be the Emperor of the Immortal Realm and the Emperor of the Underworld. In the end, you were tricked." Bai Qi waved his hand and pushed her finger away. He sneered and said, "You should be worried about how you are going to defend this place when the strong enemies come." The Qing Tian Great Demon King retracted her finger, but she raised her entire jade arm and hung it lazily on his shoulder. She smiled and said, "Strong enemies? Overturn the two of you? I don't care about them, but I want to see those old opponents again. I don't know if they can stop the advance of the demon world's army." Back then, when the old people of the celestial realm and the netherworld saw that the three realms had been settled, they all went to the netherworld palace one after another. They wholeheartedly searched for the gate to the realm of gods. "I guess they won't come out again." Bai Qi's eyes flashed as if he was thinking of something. "They all went to the netherworld palace?" The Qing Tian Great Demon King's smile froze. She said in surprise, "So many people have wasted their entire lives without being able to enter. Could it be that they still haven't learned their lesson and still believe in that stupid legend?" Chapter 1152. To be able to reach their level through long and arduous cultivation, they will be lonely once they have no opponents. They can endure for a while, but few can endure for a lifetime. It is because they have been forging ahead their whole lives that they can reach their level. Unlike us who have too many restraints and too many distracting thoughts, how can we reach the peak? Bai Qi sighed and said, "It doesn't matter if the coiling dragon god really left a passageway to the god realm in the netherworld divine palace. There's no longer any meaning for them to stay in the three realms, especially after the devil path was sealed. They call the netherworld god mansion a small realm of gods. At least there, they can find an equal opponent. I even think that after the 3 nights Demon King unifies the 3 realms, he will feel lonely after a long time. Since they have all left, then the Demon King's unification of the 3 realms is just around the corner. There won't be any more obstacles. In other words, it won't be long before the 4th Demon King takes over." The Clear Sky Demon King thought for a while, then smiled. Even if the coiling dragon god really left a passage to the realm of gods in the netherworld god mansion, with Lord Demon God's ability, he couldn't find it. In the end, he still took the path of ascension. Could they be more powerful than Lord Demon God? They are simply deceiving themselves. Hearing this, Bai Qi showed a mocking expression and said scornfully, "What? You want to sleep with the 4th Demon King again? From the Demon God to the 3 Knights? Shut up." The Qing Tian Great Demon King suddenly stopped him, and a layer of frost appeared on his face as he said, "If you didn't climb into my bed, you wouldn't be qualified to be the Emperor of the Underworld. What right do you have to criticize me?" Bai Qi's face darkened and his lips tightened. If it wasn't for the woman in front of him that made him angry, he wouldn't have taken the risk to seal the realm of demons with Jean Tai. Behind every successful person, more or less, there was a painful past that they could not bear to recall. Just when the atmosphere between the two of them became a little heavy, the earth rumbled and shook. Screams and screams could be heard from afar. The man and woman, who were speechless, suddenly looked into the distance and saw a monstrous shadow of a staff sweeping in all directions. They could vaguely see flesh and blood splattering everywhere. The Qing Tian Devil King's expression turned serious. His eyes were sharp as he asked, "Who is this?" "This is the current sovereign of the underworld, the king of the Black Mountain, Wu Feng, who is also Wang Qing's father. The divine wind staff in his hand comes from the netherworld divine palace. It is said that it is a treasure left behind by the great god Coiling Dragon in the netherworld divine palace, after he killed the wind god." Bai Qi said indifferently, "He finally arrived. I want to see how you are going to deal with the divine wind staff in his hands." Just as he finished speaking, Wu Feng's voice boomed from afar. "Bai Qi, you will be the greatest sinner of the 3 realms." A black whirlwind rose from the ground. In the blink of an eye, it was as fast as lightning. In an instant, the clouds in the sky began to move. The clouds in the sky were swept up like cotton. The wind strengthened the momentum of the whirlwind. The soil and rocks were sucked in. The trees were uprooted one by one. All of them were sucked into the body of that terrifying whirlwind. Seeing that the whirlwind covered the sky and covered the earth, the Qing Tian Devil King waved his hand and pointed. Countless green lights shot out from the hands of the green-robed men. However, they were instantly swallowed by the whirlwind without any reaction. The so-called demonic cultivators are only SOSO. With me here, the three realms will not tolerate the insolence of you demonic cultivators. A burst of wild laughter came from the whirlwind. The whirlwind blew the sky and the earth, causing the surroundings to darken. Countless soil and rocks shot out in all directions like a heavy downpour. Countless green-robed men formed a formation to defend against the whirlwind. In an instant, green splendor soared into the sky. Those who were caught unprepared screamed in pain. In the blink of an eye, countless people had fallen. After the whirlwind neared, it quickly twisted into a huge hand and grabbed at the Qing Tian Devil King, and by Qi below. Little bastard who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. The Qing Tian Devil King let out a cold snort. She raised her jade-like arms high up and rapidly expanded into two terrifying old tree claws. It was terrifying to look at. It was hard to imagine that such a beautiful woman could undergo such a terrifying transformation. One of her hands grabbed the huge hand of the whirlwind, while the other was like a hungry tiger trying to dig out its heart. She directly inserted it into the center of the whirlwind, intending to crush Wu Feng, who was hiding in the whirlwind. Her imposing manner was incomparably domineering. However, the whirlwind suddenly became faster. Like countless steel knives, it directly minced the big hand that was in a stalemate into countless pieces. Ding-ling-dang-lang sounds were heard. An incomparably thick staff exploded from the whirlwind and smashed the other big hand into pieces on the spot. In an instant it collapsed. The Qing Tian Devil King cried out in pain and retreated a few steps. The two terrifying old claws that were mostly broken quickly retracted. In the blink of an eye, they returned to two jade-like arms. However, the Qing Tian Devil King's face was deathly pale. He no longer had the contempt he had before. Instead, there was some fear in his eyes. It seemed that he did not expect the other party to be able to injure him so easily. Now you know the power of the divine wind staff. Bai Qi's tone was a bit gloating. However, he had already flipped over the obsidian light mirror in his hand. The black light that shot out angrily illuminated the heaven and earth, desperately resisting the approaching whirlwind. Those who stand in my way will die. Wu Feng's wanton laughter came. The pressure produced by the whirlwind was immediately frighteningly great. It forcibly compressed the black light that shot out angrily. The barefooted Bai Qi was quickly pushed back. Like an iron plow plowing the ground, he crashed into the mountain rocks with a rumbling sound. His feet drew a deep trench on the ground. Bai Qi's face was full of grief and indignation. Blood had already been choked out from the corner of his mouth. His arms that were holding the obsidian light mirror were already trembling uncontrollably. It seemed that he could not hold on any longer. However, he had to desperately hold on because there was no way out now. Of course, he could also escape now, but the consequences were not something he could bear. Her divine wind staff had effortlessly forced back the 100,000-strong army of the great devil king Qing Tian. Her fine black hair had unknowingly come loose, and her beautiful hair was dancing in the strong wind. She stared at Bai Qi for a while, and suddenly, she heard a loud and clear neigh of a horse coming from behind her. It was a little breathtaking. Looking back, she saw an unusually strong and fat black steed. A ghost-faced rider wearing a ferocious mask was sitting on it. His whole body was covered in black armor. One of his hands was holding the reins, and the other was holding a curled black whip. The strong black steed's mouth and nose spat out green flames from time to time. A man and a horse suddenly appeared from the passage to the demon realm. It was incomparably strange. The eyes of the demon king Qing Tian lit up, and he said with incomparable joy, "Black Knight, you came at the right time. Quickly come and help me kill this thief." He pointed his finger at the terrifying hurricane that was pressing down on them. At this moment, another two riders leaped out from the passage to the demon realm. They were also black steeds that spat out green flames. However, the two people on the horses held the reins in one hand and held up two large black flags in the other. The flags fluttered in the wind, and the two phosphorescent words "Black Knight" were extremely conspicuous on the black flags. However, these two riders carried long swords on their backs and wore black battle robes. Their faces were not covered with the ferocious ghost mask. In just a short while, countless Black Knight troops had already galloped out from the passage to the demon realm. and the rider wearing the ghost-faced rider had already fiercely lashed out the black whip in his hand. A black whip shadow that could split the heaven and earth broke through the darkness. Like a black thunderbolt, it directly struck into the hurricane that was pressing down on them with a boom. He then sat firmly on the back of the horse. His big arm pulled back, and the black steed he was sitting on stubbornly stepped back. "My divine wind staff." Wu Feng's cry of surprise came from within the hurricane. The black whirlwind also collapsed in an instant. Amidst the flying dust, the divine wind staff was actually pulled over by the black whip. With someone helping him, Bai Qi, who was resisting tenaciously, was finally able to catch his breath. However, he was already buried deep in the ground. Only his head was exposed above the ground, and his face was pale. The demon king Qing Tian suddenly shouted, "Wu Feng, today is the day you die." Seeing that the divine wind staff was trapped by the Black Knight, she immediately flew up into the sky. Her green long dress that was dragging behind her quickly grew long like a peacock spreading its tail. Her arms once again revealed ferocious giant claws. Behind her was a huge green net that covered the sky. Her black hair danced wildly in the big net. Her whole body was like a ferocious ghost pouncing on Wu Feng in the sky. "Divine wind staff break!" Wu Feng shouted in shock. The divine wind staff suddenly grew bigger, directly shattering the black whip that was entangling her. At the same time, the 9 big rings on the pumpkin-shaped staff suddenly exploded with 9 black wind blades. They shot out in all directions like ghosts, immediately cutting the green dress that was covering the sky into pieces. The pair of giant claws of the demon king Qing Tian were also easily destroyed by the 9 black wind blades. She let out a cry of surprise and quickly shot up into the sky to avoid the 9 frightening black wind blades. The eyes of Ghostface were also very shocked. The long whip in his hand once again grew long and swung out. Countless whip shadows that could split the heavens and the earth struck the divine wind staff with a rumbling sound. The power of each whip was stronger than the previous one, and the divine wind staff was directly sent flying into the sky. Wu Feng, who could not control it, was shocked. 9 black wind blades protected his body and quickly chased after the divine wind staff, afraid that it would fall into the hands of others. The Black Knight on the back of the horse retracted his whip. Ignoring the danger in front of him, he shook the reins in his hand, and the black horse immediately spat out a large ball of green flames. Its 4 hooves flew into the sky and quickly sped away. 2 knights holding large banners quickly chased after him. Behind him, an endless stream of black knights leaped out of the demon world passageway and quickly chased after him. An army of knights flew across the sky and set off a black demonic cloud. They were heading in the direction of the passageway between the Netherworld and Immortal realms. "Black Knights, how dare you leave me in the lurch? If something happens to the demon world passageway here, let's see if Demon King 3 Knight will forgive you." The demon king Qing Tian's shout echoed in the sky. However, the leader of the Black Pegasus army did not even reply. It was as if the danger here had nothing to do with him. He only cared about his own journey without stopping. High up in the sky, the demon king Qing Tian, whose clothes were in tatters, looked at the Black Knight army moving away. He was so angry that he clenched his teeth and stomped his feet. However, there was nothing he could do. With a flash of green light, he rearranged his clothes and flashed back to the ground. He supported Bai Qi, who was staggering up from the ground. Chapter 1153. Wu Feng, who had chased after the wind god staff, was bewildered, but when he saw that the Black Knights didn't have any intention of fighting him, he was overjoyed and wanted to take the chance to kill Bai Qi and Demon King Qing Tian. Who would have thought that as soon as they got close, they would see a strong man with bulging muscles and blue veins that looked like earthworms shoot out from the demon world's passage. He carried a snow-white broadsword on his shoulder and stood in the air, looking around like a tiger, his long beard swaying, exuding a domineering aura. Wu Feng was shocked and didn't dare to act rashly, but then he saw that the man seemed to have gone crazy. He held his broadsword and laughed wildly. "I didn't think that there would be a day when I would return to the 3 realms, haha." His laughter shook people's eardrums. "Li Tian, You came at the right time. Help me kill this thief and guard the tunnel to the demon world. The demon king of Qingtian was extremely surprised. He flashed to the side of the bare-chested muscular man and pointed his finger at Wu Feng, who was looking at him from afar. You still can't beat him? Li Tian looked at Wu Feng in surprise and laughed. He's just a late-stage emperor of the underworld. Can't you just use your green demon seed to turn him into your puppet? Demon King Qingtian stomped his feet. You know that Lord Demon God forbade me from using the green demon seed in the 3 realms. Before Demon King 3 Knights agreed, I wouldn't dare to use it. Stop wasting time. That person's wind god staff is a divine weapon. I have all my abilities but can't do anything to him. Come help me. Otherwise, I won't be able to answer to Demon King if the tunnel to the demon world is lost. So that's how it is. Li Tian looked at the wind god staff in Wu Feng's hand with interest. It did look a bit restless. But then he saw a group of muscular men carrying broadswords coming from the tunnel to the demon world. He shook his head apologetically. Qingtian, I'm sorry this time. Demon King has ordered us to go to the underworld to open the tunnel between the underworld and demon world after we leave the celestial world. Shuang and I have to guard the tunnel. Demon King said that we can't stop for any reason, or we'll be killed. But there's no need for you to worry. The Demon Lord has already ordered 12 Demon Kings to lead an army here. And soon after, Yao Erlang will lead an army to reinforce you. I won't be accompanying you. Li Tian waved the snow-white broadsword in his hand, and immediately led a large group of sword-wielding men away. Among them, there were quite a number of sword-wielding women who only wore loose trousers and tube tops. Their figures were fit and beautiful, attracting the eyes of others. The Devil King of Qingtian was speechless. She finally understood why the Shadow Knights had ignored her request for help. When Wu Feng, who was in the distance, heard that 12 great demon kings were leading an army, he was shocked on the spot. He grasped the divine wind staff in his hand and looked at the demon world's passageway below and hesitated. He was completely confident that he could use the wind god staff in his hand to block the passage to the demon world, so that others could not open it again. However, after thinking about it again and again, he still could not bear to give up the wind god staff. One had to know that without the wind god staff, he was nothing. Anyway, he did not make it in time to stop the demon world's passageway from opening. Therefore, he gritted his teeth and ran away with the wind god staff, not caring about the lives of the living beings in the 3 realms. The Devil King of Qingtian was stunned and looked at Bai Qi below. Both of them did not think that Wu Feng would run away just like that. In the end, the Devil King of Qingtian was perturbed. He did not know if that fellow had other tricks up his sleeves. At this moment, a blood-red light swept out from the demon world's passageway. Instantly, the pungent smell of blood filled the air. A sinister man dressed in blood-red clothes appeared in the air and looked around. His gaze fell on the Devil King of Qingtian, and he nodded slightly as a greeting. Blood Shadow. The Devil King of Qingtian also greeted him. Then he immediately saw a group of people dressed in blood-red clothes rushing out from the demon world's passageway. It was like a flood of red blood. There was actually a faint red blood mist in the air. The Devil King of Qingtian flung his long robe and quickly left. An endless stream of people dressed in blood-red clothes followed him. When the thick smell of blood in the air had just dissipated, another blurry phantom shot out from the demon world's passageway. It floated in the air like an illusion. It was impossible to see what the person inside looked like. The Devil King of Qingtian shouted, "Nightmare!" The illusory figure's voice was already confused as he replied, "Bai Qi, the Devil King has ordered you to follow us to the underworld to open the seal between the underworld and the demon world. Quickly follow us." As soon as he finished speaking, a dreamy and illusory fog surged out from the demon world's passageway. One could see many figures inside, but they could not be seen clearly. Bai Qi looked deeply at the Devil King of Qingtian. There was an indescribable, inexplicable look in his eyes. He resolutely turned around and followed this army shrouded in fog to chase after the Devil King of Qingtian. The Devil King of Qingtian looked at Bai Qi, who had gone far away, and bit her red lips. She suddenly turned around and swept her gaze over the green-clothed subordinates who had been frightened by the divine wind staff. She roared, All of you, guard the demon world's passageway properly. If anyone dares to escape, kill them without mercy." Her voice was frighteningly sharp, and there was a tremor of anger in it. The large group of green-clothed people who had scattered like sheep quickly gathered back to occupy advantageous terrain, to continue guarding the passageway to the demon world. In the supreme demon palace of the demon world, Yan Juexing was still standing to the left of the Devil King of Qing Tian's blood jade throne. Eunuch Li, who was dressed in white, was slightly bowing to the right, reporting the situation of the various armies entering the celestial world. Seeing that things were progressing smoothly, the Devil King of Qing Tian, who was listening with his eyes closed, finally let out a sigh of relief. He opened his eyes and tilted his head slightly to look at Yan Juexing on the left. He smiled and said, "After we pacify the 3 realms, I will personally lead some people to accompany you to the Blue Sea outside the celestial world, and search for the Blue Sea essence in the Blue Sea death trap. This will help you cleanse the devil barrier that has accumulated in your body, due to cultivating demonic techniques." "Thank you, Devil King, for your favor, but," Yan Juexing said excitedly, "it is recorded in the demonic book that the Blue Sea essence is produced from the blue crystals that fell from the endless starry sky countless years ago. It is unknown how many years it takes for it to be produced. It is very precious and can be said to be the essence of the universe. After Lord Devil God discovered it, he treated it as a treasure. Lord Devil God also borrowed the Blue Sea essence to temper himself, allowing his cultivation to advance by leaps and bounds. It is a treasure that cultivators can only encounter, but not seek. It is a pity that most people do not know its profoundness. Even the 3 young masters did not enjoy such a fortuitous encounter. How can Yan Juexing dare to monopolize it?" "You are worrying too much." The Devil King of Qing Tian waved his hand slightly and said, "Not everyone can enjoy the Blue Sea essence. Those who are not talented will not be able to enjoy it. If they use it, they will suffer a backlash. If it is light, it will change a person's personality. If it is heavy, it will make a person lose their mind and lose their sense of self. This is the so-called qi deviation in cultivation. If it is serious, they will not be able to withstand the baptism of the Blue Sea essence and explode." Yan Juexing was slightly surprised. He had never seen this in the records of the demonic book. The Devil King of Qing Tian continued, "I know the talent of my 3 sons better than anyone else. With their intelligence, they will not be able to withstand the baptism of the Blue Sea essence. Letting them enjoy it will only harm them. My youngest son is quite intelligent. Unfortunately, the demon realm was sealed back then, so I could not obtain the Blue Sea essence to help him refine his body and change his fate of not being able to cultivate. Otherwise, my demonic path would have gained another rare cultivation genius. My talent is much higher than that of my 3 sons. Back then, I could not even withstand the baptism of the Blue Sea essence, let alone them." Hearing this, Yan Juexing immediately said respectfully, "The Demon Lord is too modest." If Yan Juexing had the ability of the Demon Lord, he wouldn't have been destroyed by that traitor Yu Qianqiu back then. "You don't have to flatter me." The Devil King of Qing Tian's gaze looked outside the tall palace gate, and said with a faint smile, "You are different. Since you were able to endure the pain and torture of the 7-star blood-stabbing art, you are qualified to enjoy the baptism of the Blue Sea essence. Otherwise, Lord Demon God would not have secretly protected you in the divine realm. Furthermore, you are now the Vice Palace Lord of my Demon Palace, and the next Devil King's successor. No matter which aspect, you are more qualified to enjoy the baptism of the Blue Sea essence than my 3 sons. So, you don't have to delay it anymore. Otherwise, you will be hypocritical. Let's be honest with each other. There is no need to be so polite." "Yes." Yan Juexing replied respectfully. Suddenly, he felt that Eunuch Li seemed to be secretly observing him. When he raised his head, he saw that Eunuch Li was slightly lowering his head and not moving at all. The feeling just now seemed to be an illusion. In the illusory Immortal City, in an empty shop, Yu Qianqiu and Nong Zhu stood behind the open window and looked at the dense crowd in the central square at the foot of the mountain. At this moment, the entire illusory Immortal City was occupied by rogue cultivators from all directions. It was impossible to count how many people there were. It was said that the Heartless Palace had gathered 2 to 3 million rogue cultivators here. The External Affairs Commander under the former Immortal Emperor Jin Tai, the current Vice Palace Lord of the Heartless Palace, Wuxia, was floating in the air. He was giving an impassioned speech to the countless people below, enticing the rogue cultivators from all over the world to seize the opportunity to make contributions. In short, he gave a lot of temptations that those rogue cultivators who were used to suffering couldn't resist. Wu Xiong's rhythmic voice echoed in the sky. Behind him were many disciples of the Heartless Palace. As Yu Qianqiu squinted his eyes and stared at Wu Xiong, Nong Zhu, who was beside him, suddenly sent him a telepathic message and sighed. Even I am a little tempted after hearing it. I can't wait to follow the Heartless Palace and have a bright future. Unfortunately, I have already boarded your pirate ship. Her words seemed to be teasing him, reminding him that he often did such bewitching things. Yu Qianqiu acted as if he didn't hear it. He coldly snorted and replied, "They are just a group of people who gathered in a hurry. Wang Qing hasn't appeared yet. Can Wu Xiong lead them to stop the invasion of the demon realm? Believing in such nonsense is asking for trouble. When they wake up from their dream, I hope Wu Xiong can still lead the Heartless Palace to advance and retreat with them." At this moment, the neighing of countless war horses came from high up in the sky. Everyone looked up and saw rolling black clouds coming from the horizon. Not long later, they saw countless shadow cavalry riding on heavenly horses that were spitting green flames as they flew across the sky. Countless horse hooves were faintly discernible in the black fog. The shadow cavalry was like a long dragon. Its head could not be seen in front, and its tail could not be seen at the back. When it passed overhead, a huge pressure caused everyone below to keep quiet out of fear. The momentum was very terrifying. No one had ever seen such a formation before. Chapter 1154. The ghost-faced rider took the lead, and the two riders behind him each held a large flag. The two words Shadow Riders fluttered on the black flag. Behind the flag was a column of 10 riders riding side by side. The 100,000 Shadow Riders at the back were majestic and unconstrained. Countless green flames flickered in the black mist created by their killing intent. Wu Xiong, who had just made an impassioned speech, was speechless as he stared silently at the sky. Just the two words Black Knights were enough to strike fear into the hearts of everyone below. It wasn't because they had heard of their great name, but because wherever the flag flew, the invincible aura it exuded made everyone feel a great deal of pressure. Although the sky above the hallucinatory Immortal City was obstructed by the white fog, the people above couldn't see the people below. But the people below could see the people above. But with so many people gathered below, it was impossible for the black-armored army above to not sense it at all. But they were completely arrogant, as if they didn't care about everything below. Was this the momentum of the demon realm's army? Everyone asked themselves apprehensively. Then they stared at Wu Xiong. He had just said that he would lead everyone to fight to the death against the demon realm. Why was there no reaction now? Behind the window of the shop, Yu Qianqiu smiled and transmitted his voice to Nong Zhu. Haha. Wu Xiong slapped his own mouth. To be honest, he was very happy to see Wu Xiong being humiliated. After all, the two of them had a grudge. No one wanted their enemy to be mighty. Look! Nong Zhu suddenly pointed outside the window. Yu Qianqiu looked back, and the smile on his face froze. He saw that Wu Xiong had already pulled out his sword and pointed it to the sky. He looked around and shouted angrily. Today, those who fight side by side with my Heartless Palace will be my life and death brothers tomorrow. Today is the day to fight to the death against the demon realm. Kill. The disciples of Unrequited Love Palace behind him shouted in unison, and the 3 million people below also let out battle cries that shook the heavens. Even the two people in the loft felt the shop shake. It was as if those people had taken stimulants. All of them had excited expressions on their faces as they took out all sorts of weapons and soared into the sky. They followed Wu Xiong and the others as they killed their way into the horizon, heading straight in the direction where the Black Knights had gone. Their imposing manner was simply indomitable, making one's blood boil. It was estimated that if each of them spat, They would be able to drown 100,000 shadow cavalry soldiers half to death. Yu Qianqiu and Nongzhu looked at each other in disbelief. Damn it! Did I see a ghost? Yu Qianqiu spat. He asked himself if he had gauged the heart of a gentleman with his own mean measure. Then he shook his head and said, "That's not right." He teleported to the window behind him and looked at the sky. Nongzhu did not know what he saw, but her face showed an expression of understanding. Then she saw him slap the window in front of him and directly rush out. Nongzhu immediately flew out of the window. They stood side by side on the roof of the shop. The sky was high and the clouds were thin. The view was extremely wide. In the distance, the sky was full of figures flying over. It was hard to count how many people there were, but it was estimated that there were tens of millions of people. No one knew how many people were behind. Even the sky was half dark. The scene was unimaginably large. The condensed murderous intent was like a tide, covering the sky and the earth, directly blocking the advance of the Shadow Cavalry Army. And the Shadow Cavalry Army quickly formed a battle formation, without the slightest intention to retreat. It seemed that they wanted to fight alone at all costs, but it gave people the feeling that they were like ants trying to shake a tree. Wang Qing has finally arrived. It seems that people from all sects have arrived. Yu Qianqiu's eyes paused on the reflective silver mask in the distance. Then he roughly glanced at the clothes of the countless people who suddenly appeared. He sighed with emotion and said, "The Immortal Underworld Demon-Killing Alliance. It's rare that they are united. It seems that because of everyone's fear of the diabolism, all sects have been forced to unite and fight desperately." Nongzhu was so shocked by such a huge scene that she couldn't speak. After a while she murmured, "No wonder Wu Xiong is so confident. No wonder these loose cultivators are so unafraid of death. It turns out that they saw a large number of reinforcements coming and want to fish in troubled waters." While the two of them were talking, the Shadow Cavalry Army had already been surrounded by countless people from all sides, so much so that they could no longer be seen. In the crowd, the eyes behind the silver mask and the ghost mask looked at each other silently. It seemed that they wanted to see the story behind the other's mask. The two only needed to give an order, and the people from both sides would start a fight to the death. "Who are you?" The two asked the same question at the same time. However, behind the ghost mask was a woman's voice. As soon as the words came out, the two were stunned at the same time. It seemed that they didn't expect that they would have such a tacit understanding. The people around them also looked at each other. Wang Qing could see that the other's cultivation was higher than his, but he was still full of confidence. He said calmly, "Turn over a new leaf and fight against the Demon King of the Three Knights with us. If you do, we can let you go. Otherwise, we will kill you without mercy." His right hand was already touching the storage bracelet on his left wrist. However, the answer he got this time was the other's whip. The Shadow Cavalry charged straight into the heavy encirclement. With a wave of his hand, the shiny black whip in his hand suddenly lengthened. Like a long spear, it swept across the endless crowd in front of him. It immediately caused a wave of shocked and angry shouts. Almost at the same time, Yu Qianqiu and Nongzhu, who were standing on the roof, saw a dazzling snow-blue light explode out from the countless gaps in the crowd. It shone brightly, as if a huge snow-blue thorny ball had suddenly appeared in the sky. The light was so dazzling that no one dared to look directly at it. The pupils under the ghost mask suddenly shrank. Feeling the unparalleled power of the sweeping snow-blue light, the long whip in his hand instantly retracted like a spring. Then layer upon layer, it shot out again. It set off 1,000 layers of visible waves that surged towards Wang Qing, trying to stop the destructive snow-blue light. Bang bang bang. Thousands of rapid explosions sounded like one. The layers of black whip that had been twisted and turned 1,000 times instantly broke into more than 2,000 pieces. A long whip bent into 1,000 pieces, which was equivalent to more than 2,000 layers of defense. However, it still couldn't stop the furious attack of the snow-blue light. In an instant it was completely destroyed. However, the long whip's defense finally weakened the power of the snow-blue light. With a crisp ding sound, it finally slashed at the ghost mask. Then the ghost mask broke into 2 pieces and flew away. Her beautiful hair was blown away by the fierce wind, and her beautiful face under the ghost mask was filled with shock. She looked at the huge six-dragon snow-blue sword in Wang Qing's hand in disbelief, as if she couldn't believe that there was someone in this world who could display such terrifying power with a single strike. The whole army of black-armored soldiers was shocked. They didn't expect that there was such a terrifying figure in the immortal world. With one sword, he forced the great devil king of the black-armored soldiers to be unable to fight back. The people of the immortal world were refreshed and immediately became confident. As soon as the two of them made their moves, it was equivalent to launching the general order to attack. Suddenly, streams of light shot in all directions. Countless fairy weapons bombarded the surrounded army of 100,000 black-armored soldiers. The latter immediately cut off their means of retreat and sank their boats to fight back desperately. The tens of millions of people of the immortal underworld demon-killing alliance couldn't do anything at once. So they quickly circled back and surrounded the army of 100,000 black-armored soldiers again and again. The encirclement was even tighter than an iron bucket. Even so, most of them didn't even have a chance to fight back. Great Demon King Li Tian had no time to care about this. He had already shot to the sky and slashed out a huge saber shadow. It slashed toward Wang Qing as if it could split the heaven and earth, setting off a raging sea above the ninth heaven. Go! Wang Qing waved the big sleeve of his blue robe. 3 of the 6 flying dragons that were chasing and intercepting the Great Demon King Black Cavalry immediately separated and shot toward Great Demon King Li Tian, forcing him to pull back his saber to save himself on the spot. Li Tian, who didn't take these 3 flying dragons seriously, swung his saber in an extremely domineering manner. At first, he thought that he could quickly deal with them, but as soon as they exchanged blows, he realized that it was not the case at all. Once he was entangled by these 3 flying dragons, he would immediately feel the endless sword intent that was as fine as a drizzle. It was bone-chilling and endless. That was the obsessive sword intent of turning one's will into steel. It couldn't be blocked at all. If one was not careful, it would drill into one's pores and rampage around. It would take a lot of effort to force it out. If it drilled into one's ears and eyes, it would be very troublesome. Chapter 1155. Putting aside the fact that he had to constantly guard against these sword intents, the most troublesome thing was the flying dragon itself. Its sharpness was simply rare in the world. After colliding with his great on saber several times, a few deep scratches had already appeared on the great on saber. He didn't dare to use too much strength to resist, fearing that he would accidentally break the great on saber. Not long after, Li Tian figured out the secret of the 6-dragon snow-blue sword. He found that the snow-blue rainbow dragons on the 3 flying swords were actually transformed by that strange sword intent. The reason why there was such a strange sword intent on the flying swords was obviously that someone had used an extremely powerful sword intent to stimulate the sword true spirit in the swords to guard the sword intent. Once controlled by someone, the flying swords would immediately erupt with a powerful sword intent to boost the power, and the power would multiply. Li Tian, who was chased around by the 3 flying dragons, was instantly miserable. He had no room to use his abilities when encountering such powerful treasures. Now he finally understood why Jin Tai and Bai Qi, whose cultivation was similar to his, lost the thrones of Immortal Emperor and Emperor of the Underworld respectively. He finally understood why the arrogant He Qi Great Demon King would be chased around everywhere, and even ask him for help. His feelings were indeed strange. Now he quite regretted listening to the words of the He Qi Great Demon King and getting involved in this battle. But if he fled now, what about the 100,000 soldiers he brought to guard the Immortal Realm and Netherworld Realm? Was he going to just leave them here? Wouldn't he be laughed at by others later? He finally found himself in the same dilemma as the He Qi Great Demon King. Damn it! This guy's cultivation is only at the late stage of Immortal Emperor. But this flying sword has surpassed the 9th grade immortal artifact. It's clearly a divine artifact. Where did this bastard get it? There's no way to fight this battle. Li Tian, who was being chased around, was so angry that he screamed. When he saw Wang Qing calmly and easily controlling the flying sword to deal with the two famous great demon kings in the devil world, he immediately cursed. Who are you? If you have the ability, let's put down the treasures and fight with our real strength. Do you believe that I won't slap you into a pile of dog shit in 3 moves? Wang Qing didn't care about him at all. He only cared about blocking the two of them, and buying enough time for the immortal underworld demon-slaying alliance to kill the enemies. Nongzhu, who was standing on the roof and watching the battle, could not take her eyes off it. She felt that this battle was worthwhile. She sighed and said, I didn't expect Wang Qing to be so powerful. No wonder he could destroy the immortal palace. Just as he finished speaking, Li Tian shouted angrily from the sky, Blood Shadow, hurry up and help me. If we don't get rid of this person, you and I won't be able to guard the passage between the immortal realm and the netherworld. These words were exactly the same as the original words of the great devil king of the dark cavalry. Yu Qianqiu and Nongzhu hurriedly looked back and saw a red mist surging from afar, which made their hearts tremble. Nongzhu exclaimed, More reinforcements are coming. I'm afraid Wang Qing can't hold on anymore. Kill. A sharp cry came from afar, and a red light was the first to shoot up into the sky. Wang Qing waved his blue robe sleeve again and said sternly, Go! One of the 3 flying dragons that were fighting the Shadow Knights, and Li Tian flew out and quickly faced the red light that shot over. Immediately, a sinister-looking man in blood clothes appeared and fought with 2 of the flying dragons. The red tide that followed also crashed into the fierce and grand battle circle, and was once again swallowed by the battlefield formed by tens of millions of people. The sects of the immortal realm were worried that Wang Qing wouldn't be able to hold on, but they found that Wang Qing was still able to fight against 3 demonic masters with ease. Everyone's confidence skyrocketed, and they trapped the 300,000 troops of the demonic world and slaughtered them. Shocked and angry shouts resounded throughout the world, and the battle continued to become white-hot. Li Tian, how dare you trick me? The sharp voice of the great devil king of the blood shadow sounded in the air. After being tortured by the 2 flying dragons, he wanted to run but couldn't bear to abandon his 100,000 troops. He immediately found that he was tricked by the great devil king of Li Tian. Li Tian, who was tormented to the point of losing his temper, immediately said, Blood Shadow, look at what you're saying. Everyone is fighting for the demonic lord in the 3 realms. How is it me who tricked you? According to what you said, didn't I get tricked by the dark cavalry? Damn it! Who knew that we would encounter such a monster? Thinking about it, it's really hard on Jin Tai and Bai Qi. Those 2 guys must have been chased everywhere. Speaking of which, we have to thank this guy. If Jin Tai and Bai Qi weren't chased everywhere by this guy, why would they open the passage to the demonic world and let us out? He spoke out the helpless thoughts of Jin Tai and Bai Qi. If the 2 of them heard this, would they feel that they had found a confidant? In fact, with everyone's strength, it wouldn't be a problem for anyone to kill 10 Wang Qing, but the key was that the divine weapon in Wang Qing's hand was too powerful. It couldn't be measured by strength at all. Actually, at this moment, Jin Tai was hiding and watching the battle from afar. He had experienced Wang Qing's strength before. Back then, he and Bai Qi could only barely block 1 flying dragon each. The 3 great demon kings who were rushing over were about the same level of cultivation as him and Bai Qi. In other words, Wang Qing could still free up 3 flying dragons to deal with him. After thinking about it, he suppressed the impulse to join the battle and decided to wait and see. At this moment, Li Tian's eyes suddenly lit up. He said, Blood Shadow, look, the Nightmare Lord is here. Blood Shadow took a glance and indeed saw a large area of fog rushing over at lightning speed. He immediately sneered. Li Tian, why aren't you calling the Nightmare Lord over to help? Li Tian rejected him without any hesitation. I won't call you anymore. You said that I cheated you, so it's hard for me to explain myself. What if I attract the Nightmare Lord and you throw dirty water on me? Wouldn't I be wronged? If you want to call him, call him. You dog. You win. Blood Shadow glared at Li Tian angrily. Then, with the thought that if he was going to be unlucky, everyone would be unlucky, he shouted, Nightmare Lord, hurry up and help us. If we don't get rid of this person, I'm afraid we won't be able to successfully open the passage between the netherworld and demon world. How are we going to answer to the demon king then? Kill. An ethereal command came from afar. A shadow shot over with Bai Qi following closely behind. The two of them directly flashed into the sky and joined forces to attack Wang Qing. Go. Wang Qing swung his sleeves. A resolute look of fighting to the death flashed in his eyes. Two flying dragons roared and shot out rapidly towards the Nightmare Lord and Bai Qi. The 100,000-strong army in the fog swiftly joined the battle in the distance. These people, in addition to the 300,000-strong army from before, were the elites of the four great demon kings. Although the various sects of the immortal world had the advantage in numbers, they were also starting to feel somewhat overwhelmed. The number of casualties was rapidly increasing. If it wasn't for the fact that Wang Qing was able to fight against the 5 great experts by himself and stabilize the morale of the army, many of them would have already fled. In addition, the sect leader of the Lifefire Palace, Hu Jun, was constantly saying that everyone had already participated in this war. The Devil Path would definitely not let them off after this, inciting the various sects to fight to the death against the Devil Army. The situation was truly tragic. I'm coming. An angry shout rang out. A golden light shot over. Jin Tai, who was hiding far away, finally appeared to participate in the battle. The reason why he appeared now was because 5 of Wang Qing's 6 flying dragons had already been held up. He didn't have to worry about being ganged up on by the flying dragons. Moreover, if he didn't appear now, he wouldn't be able to answer to the Demon King 3 nights. He believed that there would be more Devil World experts rushing over. He was confident that he could deal with 1 flying dragon until reinforcements arrived. Needless to say, Wang Qing immediately sent out another flying dragon to deal with Jin Tai. With his cultivation, dealing with 6 experts equivalent to the Great Demon King at the same time was quite strenuous. It didn't take long for him to become a little clumsy and tired. Even so, Yu Qianqiu and Nongzhu couldn't help but gasp. Yu Qianqiu shook his head slowly and said, "Even if Wang Qing loses this battle, it's still a glorious defeat." Nongzhu nodded with a solemn expression. Good. With his cultivation, he won't be able to hold on for long. The moment Jin Tai arrived, he immediately shouted an idea to the others. Everyone, increase the frequency of your attacks. Even if we can't kill him, we can exhaust him to death. A heart-wrenching scene immediately appeared in the sky. A loud sound shook the sky. The 6 experts surrounded Wang Qing like a wheel of wind and fire, stirring up the sky and earth. The 6 wyverns began to let out waves of sorrowful cries. Gradually, they withdrew their huge snow-blue bodies to protect Wang Qing, who was in the middle of the fight. The lower jaw under the silver mask of Wang Qing had begun to overflow with blood. A trace of sadness flashed in his eyes. Suddenly, he looked up to the sky and let out a long roar of high fighting spirit, stirring the clouds, and forcibly cheering himself up. However, everyone could see that Wang Qing was at the end of his strength. The people of various sects who were desperately fighting in the distance suddenly wavered. Some sect masters were already discussing where to retreat. In fact, they had no problem dealing with the 400,000 Devil World army. However, the key was that they knew that once Wang Qing was defeated, the 6 experts would join the battle. No matter how many people there were, they couldn't stop them. By then, everyone would be slaughtered. At this moment, an uplifting shout came from afar. Immortal World allies, hold on. He Qi has led the 300 million Underworld army to help our allies. Everyone looked over, and saw that the sky in the distance had turned completely dark. A dark mass of flowing light surpassed the locusts that filled the sky and flew over. The scene could be said to be absolutely shocking. Just the number of 300 million was enough to shake the morale of the various sects in the immortal world. The Underworld army, which consisted of 100 million Dark Nether army and 200 million subordinates of the Underworld heroes, quickly joined the battle, and immediately beat the Demon World army to the point where they couldn't fight back. After all, the Underworld heroes were not to be trifled with. Madame He Qi, who had flown over on her giant green snake, saw that Wang Qing was powerless. She immediately ordered the 100 million Dark Nether army to attack the 6 experts. The concentrated attacks that poured down like rain immediately shocked the 6 experts. They were instantly beaten to a miserable state. The Dark Nether army wasn't ordinary scattered soldiers. They had more or less undergone some training, and were adept at collective attacks. The 100 million soldiers might be nothing to them individually, but the combined attack was something even Demon King 3 Knights couldn't handle. Chapter 1156. For other forces, no one would feel at ease handing over their own people to someone else. This way, they would restrict each other and not be able to display their full strength. However, the Army of Onyx was an organization that operated on military orders. Thus, when Madame Blackpool gave an order, the army of over 100 million could quickly organize and obey her orders. Thus, the Army of Onyx was even more united than the tens of millions of people in the immortal world. They were able to unleash boundless power at once. Millions of people gathered in one group. They ignored the others and focused their attacks on one expert. In this way, there were more than 100 groups surrounding the 6 experts. Space was limited, and the 100 million people couldn't squeeze together to attack. Thus, the 6 experts were trapped in layers. A huge human ball appeared in the sky. It was a spectacular sight. Rumble. The people outside heard a terrifying explosion, but they didn't know what was happening inside the human ball. Countless streams of light shot out from inside. Nightmare was the first to be hit. He was scared out of his wits. He had never been attacked by so many people in his life. Just looking at the number of people was enough to scare him. Caught off guard, he made a huge mistake. Just as he was about to teleport away, he felt a chill on his back. The incomparably sharp 6-dragon snow blue sword had chopped off half of his shoulder with a hong sound. Even his arm was separated from his body. The King of Nightmares, whose figure could not be seen clearly, was beaten to reveal his true form on the spot. Countless rain-like sword wills quickly invaded his body through the wound on his shoulder, forcing the King of Nightmares, who was trying to escape, to slow down slightly. However, in that moment of sluggishness, it was immediately bombarded by the streams of light released by the countless treasures. Nightmare didn't even have time to scream. Perhaps his voice was drowned out by the countless explosions. In short, his entire body was smashed into pieces. This scene scared the other 5 people even more. Their faces changed drastically. No matter how high their cultivation was, seeing Nightmare, who was of the same cultivation level as them, killed in one move, they didn't have any intention of fighting anymore. At this moment, there was only one thought in their minds: run away. Blackpool bitch. I'll make you a prostitute for all eternity. Bai Qi shouted angrily. He didn't expect that the power he let go would become a fatal threat. Break. Li Tian, who continuously teleported to avoid the attacks, grabbed the fleeting opportunity. The great lightsaber in his hand emitted a shocking saber shadow. With the momentum of splitting the heavens and earth, he slashed out of the encirclement. Instantly, tens of thousands of people died under his saber. Seeing that the wyverns behind him were attacking again, and that the countless streams of light would not give him a chance to catch his breath, Li Tian did not hesitate to drag his great-on saber and teleport out of the gap that he had created. After charging out of the human ball, he fled for his life without looking back. The obsidian nether light mirror in Bai Qi's hand displayed a large-scale killing power. Seizing the opportunity, he quickly attacked. The monstrous black light directly turned the crowd in front of him into ashes, and a huge gap was quickly opened. Bai Qi rushed out, and the Black Knight Great Demon King behind him also seized the opportunity to rush out. Almost in the time it took for a breath, the opening was quickly blocked again. Afterward, Kinta and Blood Shadow also directly broke out of the encirclement with their powerful cultivation, and quickly fled. The remaining 5 Great Demon King-level powerhouses were scared out of their wits. With the lesson of Succubus being killed in seconds, no one had the courage to turn around and fight back. It was more important for them to leave their underlings and escape. Hundreds of millions of people joined forces, but they still couldn't trap a few people. Instead, hundreds of thousands of people were killed by a few people in the blink of an eye and escaped. This was the horror of a true powerhouse. If hundreds of millions of people didn't join forces, These few people could do whatever they wanted. However, that was under the situation where there were no powerhouses to stop them. In the blue sky and white clouds, the 5 powerhouses who escaped met on the way. They stopped in the air and looked back with lingering fear. Li Tian touched the scars on the great lightsaber and said painfully, "The people of the immortal world and netherworld must have taken the wrong medicine. When did they become so united? They actually gathered hundreds of millions of people to fight against our demonic army." The sinister-looking Blood Shadow also took a deep breath and shook his head repeatedly. "This is unprecedented. Even when we trampled them under our feet back then, there wasn't such a big rebound. It's so scary to be so united." Bai Qi and Kinta secretly glanced at each other. The people of the demon world might not know, but the two of them had stayed in the immortal world and netherworld for such a long time, so they could understand the feelings of the people of these two worlds. When the demonic path dominated the 3 worlds, they treated the people of the 3 worlds as slaves to be killed and humiliated at will. No one wanted to live like that again, so they naturally joined forces to resist. To put it bluntly, if the demon world was still sealed, even if Bai Qi and Kinta were still in charge of the immortal world and netherworld, it was impossible to gather hundreds of millions of people in a short period of time. It was easier said than done to gather hundreds of millions of people together. But when the demon world reopened, it was different because it had seriously harmed the interests of everyone in the immortal world and netherworld. Everyone had the same goal. As long as someone made a call, it was very easy to gather a large number of people. At the very least, they would gather together to symbolically resist. The more people there were, the more bolder they would be. What kind of person is that woman called He Qi? She actually has such a big rallying power. She can gather so many people from the netherworld at once. It's simply inconceivable. Black Knight Great Demon King frowned and asked. The other two also looked at Kinta and Bai Qi with inquisitive eyes. Hearing this, Kinta sneered and looked at Bai Qi sarcastically. It's not anyone else, it's the concubine under his crotch. In the end, he raised a tiger and brought disaster to himself. What kind of rallying power does that bitch have? Bai Qi glared at Kinta, then explained to the others why the immortal world and netherworld were so united. So that's how it is. Li Tian and the others immediately understood after listening to the explanation. Blood Shadow narrowed his eyes and said, "So what if there are many people? The 5 of us will take a detour to avoid them, and quickly enter the netherworld, and open the passage between the 2 worlds. They won't be able to catch up to us." "That won't do. Once they are fully prepared and lie in ambush near the passage, who has the confidence to escape from the joint forces of so many people again?" Everyone saw Nightmare's death. Kinta immediately rejected this plan. He didn't want to take that risk again. The others also looked at each other and felt that it was a little too dangerous. Kinta then said, "The netherworld's territory is vast. There are more than 100 billion cultivators under the various tyrants. The 300 million people that He Qi brought is just a hair from 9 oxen. If so many people join forces to resist the demon world's army, even if we can break into the netherworld, with such a big disturbance and the countless formations they have set at the entrance of the netherworld and demon world, I'm afraid we won't be able to open the passage smoothly. Also, don't forget that Wu Feng might have the support of a group of old fellows from the Netherworld God Palace." The beautiful Black Knight Great Demon King's face suddenly turned cold. She stared at Kinta and shouted, "Since there is such a big obstacle, why didn't you report to the Demon King earlier? You caused us to lose hundreds of thousands of Demon World's army. What are you two planning?" "Just like you, we didn't expect the Netherworld and Immortal World to be so united to resist." After all, Kinta had just returned. It wasn't good for him to refute. He could only smile helplessly and said, "I didn't even dream of it." "Enough. Now is not the time to argue about this." Li Tian stopped him and looked around at the others. "We didn't successfully complete the mission. We should think about how to report to the Demon King. You must know that the Demon King said that those who cause trouble will be killed without mercy." As soon as he said this, everyone's expression became serious. After a long time, Blood Shadow slowly shook his head and said, "I think the Demon King won't blame us. After all, There is a reason for this. It's not that we didn't try our best. Nightmare even lost her life. We just need to report the truth. That's right. Report the truth and let the demon monarch prepare early. Jintai, who was nodding his head repeatedly, suddenly stopped mid-sentence. The others followed his gaze and saw Wu Feng, who had arrived late, holding the wind god staff and stopping in the air far away, looking at them. Both sides became alert. After some secret negotiations, they also didn't have the confidence to deal with the wind god staff in Wu Feng's hands. In addition, they were worried that there were pursuers behind them. They didn't want to be entangled any longer, so they quickly went around Wu Feng and quickly left. Li Tian's grumbling voice was left in the air. We met 2 divine weapons the moment we came out. Since when did divine weapons become everywhere? Wu Feng, who also didn't have the confidence to deal with the 5 of them, secretly let out a sigh of relief and quickly rushed back. By the time he met Wang Qing and the others, the Immortal and Netherworld's people had already joined forces and killed the Demon World's 400,000 army. Not a single one escaped. On the other hand, the Immortal and Netherworld demon-killing alliance's losses were almost 10 times that of the other side. Just the 3 million loose cultivators alone had already lost more than 2 million. However, compared to the huge base, this loss was nothing. At this time, everyone had already found a way to deal with the Demon World's experts. Each of them was bursting with confidence. They all shouted that they would chase the Demon Dao people back to the Demon World, and then think of a way to seal the Demon World again. After Wang Qing's family met up and negotiated, Wu Feng was overjoyed. He didn't expect that the 5 people he met along the way were actually beaten back. After knowing that Wang Qing had actually withstood the combined forces of 6 experts, his confidence also skyrocketed. He believed that the wind god staff in his hands was not any weaker than the 6-dragon snow blue sword in Wang Qing's hands. He also had the confidence to fight against the Demon World's experts. However, he was still worried that Madame Blackpool had brought all her people, and was afraid that something would happen in the Netherworld. He told everyone the reason that he was afraid of a fire in his backyard, and had Madame Blackpool and Wu Xiong bring 10 million people back to guard the Netherworld. As for the father and son, they led more than 300 million people to the passage between the Immortal and Demon Worlds. Seeing the sky-covering flowing light passing through the sky, Yu Qianqiu and Nongzhu couldn't help but follow behind everyone to watch the show. Chapter 1157. In the Demon Palace of the Demon World, Eunuch Li quickly gave a detailed report of the bad news. Standing in the middle of the palace in a scarlet cloak, the Demon World of 3 Knights closed his eyes and listened to Eunuch Li's report. Yan Zhuixing, who was following behind Demon Lord 3 Knights, was secretly alarmed when he heard this. The expedition army of the demonic world had actually been besieged by more than 300 million soldiers from the Immortal and Netherworld realms. They had suffered a crushing defeat, and even the Nightmare Demon King had died in battle, and had been instantly killed. What was even scarier was that there were more than 100 billion cultivators in the Netherworld, and that didn't include the large aquatic race in the River Styx and the experts in the Netherworld God Palace. If so many people united to fight against the Demon World's army, Yan Zhuixing couldn't help but wonder if Demon Lord 3 Knights could really lead the demonic path to unify the 3 realms. Nightmare Demon died in battle. Demon Lord 3 Knights' scarlet cape suddenly fluttered, and he slowly opened his eyes. He sneered. A bunch of self-proclaimed righteous people, but the things they do in the dark are worse than my demonic path. It's just that we do it in the open, but they only dare to do it in the dark. Can they really be so united? They're just resisting out of fear. Threats and promises can easily resolve this. A bunch of selfish people. Human nature is easy to bully. Watch how I make them bow down to me. Eunuch Li bowed slightly. Demon Lord. Li Tian and the others know they've messed up Demon Lord's plan. Please punish them. These guys. Forget it. They can't be blamed. Even I didn't expect this to happen. Demon Lord 3 Knights' voice stirred up the blood clouds above the Demon Palace again. He gave a grand order. Pass down my decree. Order the armies that have already entered the immortal world to stop their original plans, and return to defend the passageway between the Netherworld and Immortal World. Order the 12 demon kings that have gathered in front of the passageway between the Netherworld and Demonic World to quickly return and enter the Immortal World through the passageway. Order everyone in the Devil World to be on standby. Great Demon King, quickly gather 10 million elite troops from all over the Devil World and march to the Immortal World as quickly as possible. Order the 72 commanders of the Demon Palace to lead the main army to defend the Demon World. Kill anyone who tries to cause trouble. I want to personally lead 10 million troops to conquer the Immortal World and meet the Immortal Underworld Demon-Slaying Alliance. I want to see who can stop me. Yes. Eunuch Li quickly accepted the order and left to convey the message. On the other hand, Yan Juexing, who was behind Demon King 3 Knights, was filled with excitement. He finally had the chance to settle the score with Yu Qianqiu. Due to the invasion of the demonic path, the business of the Four Links Chamber of Commerce had come to a complete halt. Now no one was in the mood to do business. In the courtyard, Nan Tianlong and Tao Zhong stood side by side. From time to time, they would look at the Heartless Palace's disciples who were guarding the perimeter motionlessly. From time to time, they would look in the direction of the inner courtyard, which was filled with pink roses. The inner courtyard was filled with all kinds of flowers. They had all been personally planted by Mu Tianjiao before she left this place to marry Wu Xiong. When she had planted them, they had only been seedlings, but now they were already luxuriant and full of flowers. When she came back, she saw that the flowers in the courtyard had been carefully taken care of. She couldn't help but feel a little surprised. At first, she thought that her father had ordered someone to do it, but when she asked, she found out that it was Tao Zhong who had taken care of it. Mu Tianjiao, who had nothing to do, was squatting in a newly planted flower bed by the wall and pulling out weeds. Her slender fingers carefully pulled out the weeds growing in the gaps between the seedlings. Wu Xiong stood behind her with his hands behind his back. Seeing her seriously pulling out the weeds, he couldn't help but sigh. Do you really need to do these chores yourself? Just leave it to the servants. He hadn't returned to the Netherworld with Madame Blackpool. Instead, he had come here halfway. Since the Four Links Chamber of Commerce doesn't have any business to take care of right now, I'm just idling around. I'll just entertain myself. Mu Tianjiao squatted there and didn't look back as she spoke. Wu Xiong's gaze landed on his beloved wife's full buttocks, and his lower abdomen couldn't help but heat up. He had always been infatuated with this woman's unique charm when she was receiving pleasure. Her figure was exquisite, but it didn't lose its fullness. He took a deep breath and calmly asked, "Why don't you come with me? This is the Mu family's property. The Mu family has no children, and now that father is gone, I naturally have to protect it. Besides, I'm used to the bright and beautiful sunlight. I really don't like the pitch-black netherworld. I've been afraid of the dark since I was young." Mu Tianjiao stood up with the weeds in her hands, walked to the side, and threw them into the wicker basket. She patted the dirt off her hands and smiled faintly at Wu Xiong. "Didn't you say that the Immortal Netherworld Evil-Killing Alliance has already found a way to defeat the Demon Realm's invasion? If that's the case, why are you in such a hurry to let me leave?" Wu Xiong frowned. "Even so, the Immortal Realm will become a battlefield sooner or later. I really can't feel at ease with you here. Besides, everyone knows you're my wife. What if the Demon Realm kidnaps you and uses you to threaten me? What do you want me to do? Is it really safe to go to the Netherworld?" Mu Tianjiao lowered her head and scraped the dirt off her fingers. She shook her head slightly. "I don't think that the Demon King 3 Knights, who shook the 3 realms back then, is so easy to deal with. I'm afraid that even if I go to the Netherworld, I won't be able to avoid the same fate. If that's the case, what difference does it make a day earlier or a day later?" She paused and looked around with deep affection. "This is my home. I really don't want to leave here. Don't worry, I won't let myself fall into the hands of the Demon Realm and be used by them to threaten you." The unspoken meaning of her last words was, "When the time comes, I'd rather die than submit. I won't make things difficult for you." "You." Wu Xiong couldn't help but feel a trace of anger, but he suppressed it in the end. He moved closer to his wife and whispered, "There are some things I won't hide from you. If we still can't resist the demon realm's army in the netherworld, we still have a way out. Father has some connections in the netherworld divine palace. We can go there. Even Demon King 3 Knights wouldn't dare to trespass there. As he spoke, he smelled Mu Tianjiao's body fragrance and couldn't help but wrap his arms around her waist. His hands began to fondle her body passionately. After rubbing for a while, he actually began to undress her clothes in broad daylight. He reached his hand into her chest and whispered in her ear, "Come with me. You and I can be entwined for a lifetime." Mu Tianjiao's expression didn't change. She allowed his hands to caress her chest. Suddenly, she asked indifferently, "If my father didn't have anyone supporting him, even if he had some connections under your care, he wouldn't have the ability to go to the netherworld to cause trouble for you, Qianqiu. Were you the one who added fuel to the fire behind the scenes? Since you have such great power in the netherworld, why couldn't you protect my father?" Although it was a question of suspicion, this analysis undoubtedly pointed out that those who dared to help Mu Bing cause trouble in the netherworld wouldn't dare to act recklessly without absolute certainty. Even the immortal Emperor Jin Tai wouldn't dare to act recklessly in the territory of the Emperor of the Underworld, Bai Qi. You have such great power, yet you couldn't protect Mu Bing. This means that you didn't do your best, or perhaps you did it on purpose. What are your intentions? Wu Xiong's hand, which was grabbing the softness, suddenly froze. Then he slowly withdrew his hand and said in a low voice, "What nonsense are you talking about? Do you think I want to see something happen to your father?" Mu Tianjiao, who had her back to him, bit her lip and said, "Go. I won't go to the netherworld with you." The last sentence slowly came out of her mouth, word by word. Wu Xiong's expression suddenly became uncertain. No one knew what he was thinking. Finally, he snorted coldly, turned around, and strode away. Tears fell from Mu Tianjiao's eyes. She bit her lip and silently tidied up her clothes that had been messed up just now. At the entrance of the immortal world to the demon world, the 12 demon kings were discussing the news that Demon King 3 Knights was about to lead an army of 10 million. Bai Qi and Jin Tai were also at the side, but it seemed that no one paid attention to them. Originally, there were a total of 13 demon kings who came to the immortal world. Unfortunately, Nightmare had died in battle, and the other 3 were like Bai Qi and Jin Tai, generals without an army. At this time, the demon world's army of nearly 900,000 was scattered within a radius of 100 miles, waiting for the enemy. As the spies in the distance continuously sent back news that the immortal underworld army was gradually approaching, the demon kings knew that Wang Qing and his son had been dragged down by the huge army. Otherwise, with their cultivation, they would have arrived long ago. Everyone would occasionally look at the demon world's entrance. Since the demon king didn't want them to take the initiative to attack, and instead wanted them to stay here and wait for orders, it meant that the demon king would arrive as soon as possible. With the demon king's speed, he should have arrived long ago, so why was he still here? At this moment, a figure shot out from the spinning black light. The newcomer had tied his hair up and wore a crown. He wore a tight-fitting black armor, and his body was well built. Under his thick eyebrows, his tiger-like eyes scanned the surroundings, and a disdainful aura couldn't be concealed. He casually shook off the scarlet cloak behind him, and walked out of the cave with a majestic gait. It was the awe-inspiring Demon King 3 Knights. The 12 Demon Kings, along with Jin Tai and Bai Qi, were slightly shocked. They quickly split into 2 sides, each with 7 people, and knelt down on one knee. "Greetings, Demon King." The crowd in the surroundings was alarmed, and they all knelt down on one knee. "Greetings, Demon King." Their voices reverberated through the heaven and earth. Demon King 3 Knights calmly walked to the center of the 14 people on either side of him before stopping. His nose, which was as if he was on tenterhooks, let out a soft hum. Only then did the 14 people cautiously stand up, their gazes filled with respect. Everyone else also stood up and quickly averted their gazes, not daring to look directly at this supreme demon king. Immediately after, a man in white clothes and a white hat flashed out from the demon world's passage, and lightly stood behind the demon king. The 14 experts all cupped their hands and respectfully called out, "Eunuchly." The reason why everyone called him eunuchly was not because he was a eunuch, but because he was the servant of the demon god Yi Gang when he first appeared. He was loyal and devoted to the Night Clan. After the demon god, he helped 3 demon monarchs to successfully ascend to the throne. His cultivation and abilities were unfathomable. No one present had ever seen him make a move, and he rarely made a move. However, everyone knew that once he made a move, no one would be able to leave alive. Thus, no one knew what abilities he had. Ever since they came into contact with him, they had always respectfully called him Eunuch Li. As for what his actual name was, none of the experts present knew. He gave off a very mysterious feeling. However, this didn't hinder everyone's respect for him, because every word that came out of his mouth represented the meaning of the previous demon kings. He was deeply trusted and valued by the previous demon kings. Chapter 1158. Eunuch Li nodded slightly at the people on both sides as a greeting. After a while, Yan Juexing quickly flew out of the Demon World Tunnel. The 14 experts respectfully called out, "Vice Palace Master." Yan Juexing immediately cupped his hands and greeted the people on both sides with a face full of smiles. Then he silently stood behind Demon King 3 Knights. Demon King 3 Knights silently looked around for a long time. Returning to the celestial world after so many years seemed to be a bit excited. Finally, his gaze landed on Bai Qi and Jin Tai, who were standing side by side. He stared at them emotionlessly, causing their hearts to jump and their scalps to go numb. Fortunately, at this moment, Great Demon King Huta stepped forward and reported, "Demon King, the enemy will arrive in an hour." He immediately helped the 2 out of their predicament. Demon King 3 Knights turned to look at the distant horizon and said indifferently, "Qingtian and Yao Erlang, lead your subordinates to defend this place. Everyone else, follow me to face the enemy." Yes. Everyone accepted the order in unison. Demon King 3 Knights and Eunuch Li had already disappeared. 2 beams of light shot into the horizon at an unimaginable speed. Yan Juexing's expression changed slightly. Those 2 actually didn't bring him along. He quickly turned into a beam of light and shot into the sky, desperately chasing after them. However, it seemed that catching up to the 2 in front of him was not very possible with his cultivation. The great demon kings quickly gathered their armies and led them in the direction that Demon King 3 Knights disappeared. Countless beams of light whistled through the sky, filled with killing intent. The Immortal Underworld Demon Killing Alliance's 300 million army majestically rushed toward the Demon World Tunnel. They were like a sky full of dark clouds rolling through the sky. Everywhere they went, they covered the sky and the ground instantly turned black. On one of the flying shuttles, Wu Feng held the wind god staff in an awe-inspiring manner as he personally piloted the flying shuttle. Wang Qing, on the other hand, was sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed, recovering the energy he had expended from fighting against the 6 experts. However, before they could even get close to the demon world's passageway, they saw 2 people floating in the sky in front of them. One of them was a man with an extraordinary bearing. He was dressed in black armor, and his scarlet cape fluttered in the wind. He was staring at them with a burning gaze. The other man in white clothes and a white hat looked over expressionlessly. His eyes were calm, giving off a feeling of looking down on everything. "Stop!" Wu Feng raised the wind god staff in his hand, and the vast army of 300 million immediately stopped with him. Wu Feng looked at the 2 of them in bewilderment. How could people who could remain indifferent in the face of so many people be simple? Especially the man with the cloak on his shoulders. His entire body exuded a disdainful aura that made people not dare to look at him directly. Wang Qing also slowly stood up from the flying shuttle, his eyes filled with vigilance as he looked at the 2 of them. Suddenly, his pupils shrank as he saw a dense stream of light rapidly approaching from the distance. Wu Feng immediately raised the divine wind staff and shouted, "They are from the demonic Tao. Everyone, get into formation and face the enemy." The order reverberated through the air, and the 300 million strong army immediately gathered in the air in accordance with the previous agreement. They formed groups of 1 million people, preparing to use the same method they had used to repel the 6 great experts. Everyone seemed to be very confident in their ability to do so. After the 10 great demon kings, Jin Tai and Bai Qi arrived, 6 of them immediately lined up behind Demon Monarch 3 knights. Demon King Li Tian pointed at Wang Qing and his son and shouted, "How dare you! Quickly greet Demon Monarch 3 knights when you see him." Wang Qing and Wu Feng were shocked. They looked at Demon Monarch 3 knights with vigilance. The two of them didn't think that the famous sovereign of the demonic world was already standing in front of them. He's Demon Monarch 3 knights. The Immortal Underworld Demon-Killing Alliance instantly burst into an uproar. Everyone's gaze is focused on the imposing man with the scarlet cloak on his shoulders. This person was able to enjoy the respect of the heroes of the demonic world, so Demon Monarch 3 knights was naturally him. Everyone's eyes revealed a trace of fear and panic. What kind of person was Demon Monarch 3 knights? He was the sovereign of the demonic Tao who had already shaken the 3 realms in the distant past. He was a legendary figure that still resounded through the ears even now. Yu Qianqiu and Nong Zhu, who were hiding behind the crowd, also heard the roar reverberating through the sky. The two of them flew up high to look, wanting to see Demon Monarch 3 knights' elegance. However, the distance between them and the crowd was too far. The people far away could only faintly make out a black dot, unable to clearly see who Demon Monarch 3 knights was. "Everyone, don't panic." Wu Feng waved the wind god staff and shouted to raise the morale of the army. "With our army of 300 million working together, even if a demon god came personally, he would have to flee. What is there to fear about a mere Demon Monarch 3 knights? Today, we will kill this demon and take over the demonic world in one fell swoop." Everyone looked back at the countless people on their side, and instantly gained some confidence. However, they were still somewhat afraid. After all, Demon Monarch 3 knights' reputation was too great in the past. He was a figure that had beaten the immortal underworld and demonic world to the point where they couldn't even raise their heads. "Ignorant juniors, you dare to behave atrociously in front of this lord. Not to mention your 300 million army. Even an army of 30 billion would not be able to withstand a single blow from this lord." Demon Monarch 3 knights' tone was light, but it reverberated in everyone's ears like thunder, causing their eardrums to tremble. Demon Monarch 3 knights had originally come to cheer for his subordinates, so he didn't feel it was beneath him to attack them first. At his position, he didn't need to personally do everything. Otherwise, what was the point of raising so many subordinates for? However, when he heard the other party insult a demon god, he couldn't bear it anymore. He crossed his arms and shot into the sky. Floating in the air, he opened his arms and made a gesture to embrace the world. He suddenly shouted, "Demonic chi billows to the heavens." Once he said these 4 words, everyone's minds were shaken. Their cultivation was so weak that they almost couldn't stand steadily. A gray fog suddenly appeared in the sky, gradually turning black. In a short while, it was like an endless sea of ink, causing the sky to change color and the sun and moon to lose their light. Rumble. Lightning flashed and thunder roared amidst the tumbling black clouds. Thunderbolts crisscrossed the sky, and a majestic pressure descended from the sky, intimidating everyone. Everyone looked at Demon Monarch 3 knights, who had dark clouds and lightning above his head. His scarlet cape was bright red under the flashing lightning, making him look like a demon god descending to the world. This was clearly a divine ability that allowed him to communicate with the Dharma of heaven and earth. Everyone instantly revealed expressions of fear. Jin Tai and Bai Qi looked at each other. They had also seen Bai Changchun communicate with the Dharma of heaven and earth, and use a similar divine ability, but it was far from such a shocking aura. Wu Feng, who had been startled awake, immediately pointed at Demon Monarch 3 knights in the sky and said anxiously, "Attack! Attack! Everyone attack 3 knights together!" Humph! Demon Monarch 3 knights' laughter rang out in the sky. He raised his arm and clenched his 5 fingers downwards. He suddenly shouted, "Watch my demon claw!" From the dark clouds in the sky, a huge ink-like claw wrapped in lightning suddenly shot out. It was incomparably sinister and terrifying. When the claw opened, it covered a radius of 10 miles. With a force that could topple mountains and overturn seas, it directly grabbed into the army of 300 million with lightning speed. Instantly, miserable screams shook the heavens. It was unknown how many people died in an instant. Many people were even sent flying by the astral winds, vomiting blood and unable to get up. This was not the end. The shocking demon claw rushed into the army and swept around wildly, immediately scattering the army of 300 million. Miserable screams rang out incessantly. At the same time, because the army was too densely packed, it was abnormally difficult for everyone to even escape. Especially those in the middle, they were knocked into each other and had nowhere to run. For a moment, they cried miserably, unable to organize an effective attack. The heroes of the demon world on the other side all gasped in shock. As expected of Demon Monarch 3 Knights, with a casual move, he could wipe out the army of 300 million. No one could stop him. Uniquely was expressionless and did not show any signs of shock. However, he slightly tilted his head to look at Yin Juexing, whose eyes were flickering. Sword-drawing form. An earth-shattering roar resounded. A dazzling snow-blue light illuminated the heaven and earth. Even Demon Monarch 3 Knights slightly tilted his head in order to avoid the intense light. An earth-splitting sharp light suddenly swept across the sky. Quang! The heaven and earth trembled. The wind and clouds changed color. It directly severed the huge demon claw that reached out from the demonic clouds at the wrist. The claw immediately collapsed into smoke and dispersed in all directions. What a great sword-drawing form. I didn't expect it to be so sharp. A mere late-stage immortal emperor was actually able to break my demon claw with one strike. You must be that person called Wang Qing, right? With this ability, it was not a waste for me to personally take action. Demon Monarch 3 Knights' eyes glowed red. He suddenly stared at Wang Qing, who was holding his sword fearlessly. He couldn't help but praise. With such strength of character, no wonder you were able to throw King Kong's slave and Bai Qi off the stage. I want to see how many people you can protect from me. Heaven's Descent Demon Flame. Demon Monarch 3 Knights roared and raised his hands to the sky. 2 phosphorescent lights shot out from his palms, instantly igniting the rolling dark clouds. The dark clouds in the sky were burned into a green sea of fire. The flames surged in the sky and illuminated everything in the world in green. Amidst the panicked screams and screams of the crowd, a large amount of green fire rain suddenly fell from the sky. In the blink of an eye, the world was filled with green fireballs. Ah! Save me! Ghostly wails and wolf howls resounded in the sky. Everywhere was filled with people wrapped in green flames. They were in a state where they could neither live nor die. The green demon flame was extremely strange. Even the protective aura couldn't block it. Whatever it touched, it would burn. Even the protective aura could be burned through. However, some people realized that they could easily force it away with the wind from their palms. However, there were so many people around that they couldn't see the way out. With so many people fanning the green flames, someone would definitely be unlucky. Furthermore, the sky was still pouring down like rain. If someone was burned and bumped into someone else, the green flame would immediately spread to them. As long as they were touched by it, they couldn't get away no matter how hard they tried. For a moment, the green fire rain didn't stop. The ground also began to burn with a boundless green sea of fire. The sky was filled with ghostly wails and wolf howls. The people who were burned to death fell to the ground like raindrops. The burnt smell rose from the ground. The scene was simply too horrible to look at. Let's go. Nongzhu couldn't bear to watch anymore. She was indeed frightened. People who were enveloped by the demon flame kept screaming and asking for help before they died. In addition, the 2 of them were also within the range of the green fire rain. This scene made Nongzhu's hair stand on end. Chapter 1159. However, Yu Qianqiu had no intention of leaving. He pulled on Nongzhu's arm, not letting him move. His face was ashen as he looked at the tragic scene in front of him. The green fireballs raining down from the sky started to circle around the 2 of them when they were 2 meters above their heads. The flames that were fanned by the others also circled around them, unable to touch the 2 of them at all. Nongzhu suddenly understood. This guy was an expert in controlling fire, so he naturally wasn't afraid of these things. Nongzhu saw that there were people who were constantly escaping and asking for help. But Yu Qianqiu was pulling him to avoid the people who were rushing over to ask for help. Nongzhu immediately said anxiously, You can control fire, quickly save them. There are so many people, how many can I save? Yu Qianqiu's face was dark as he said. Once I make a move, I will definitely attract more people to come over for help, and we will immediately be discovered by Demon King 3 Knights. Do you think we should escape or stay to save them then? If we don't escape, we will die, but if we escape, we will be leaving them in the lurch. You and I can't bear the infamy of so many people's lives. Besides, unless you and I can bring them all away, they won't be able to escape even if we extinguish the fire on their bodies. How do you think I should save them? You twisted logic. Nongzhu was so angry that she didn't say anything. She seemed to be blaming Yu Qianqiu for being too ruthless. Just as the two of them were struggling, Wu Feng saw that the situation was hopeless and knew that there was no meaning in continuing to resist. He grabbed Wang Qing and shook the wind god staff in his hand. A swirling black wind wrapped around the two of them, and they flew away from the raining fireballs. When the fireballs touched the hurricane that was protecting them, they were immediately deflected. The two of them passed through the wailing crowd and quickly disappeared. It was equivalent to abandoning their subordinates and running away. Demon King 3 Knights watched the two of them leave, and casually pulled on the scarlet cape behind him. A gust of air flowed between heaven and earth, and the rain of fire immediately stopped. The green fire clouds in the sky turned black again, and quickly dissipated. The sky cleared and the sun rose. The green sea of fire on the ground was instantly annihilated, leaving behind a charred patch. The green flames on everyone's bodies also disappeared in an instant, and those who were lucky enough to keep their lives quickly fled. The demonic army looked at Demon Lord 3 Knights with even more respect. Such a method was already considered a divine ability. Yin Juexing's eyes became fanatical, and he began to imagine the day when he would be able to do whatever he wanted. Demon King Li Tian took a step forward and cupped his hands at Demon Monarch 3 Knights. Demon Monarch. Those two have divine artifacts in their hands. Leaving them alive will be a disaster. We can't let them escape. Should we pursue them while we're still victorious? Divine artifact? Even if the divine artifact falls into their hands, it won't be of much use. If I want to keep them here, do you think they can escape? Under the gradually dissipating black clouds, Demon Monarch 3 Knights stood with his arms crossed. The cape on his shoulders fluttered in the wind. He looked into the distance and said indifferently, I want them to abandon the masses and escape. I want the people of the Immortal and Netherworld to understand one thing. Don't listen to other people's instigation, and easily gather together to resist our demonic army. Because no one in the Immortal and Netherworld will truly think for them. If they want to live, they have to obediently submit to our demonic path. If we kill the two of them, wouldn't that be helping their reputation? Instead, it would have the opposite effect when we unify the 3 realms. He paused, then narrowed his eyes and sneered. Didn't you say that the two of them are related to the Netherworld God Estate? I was just about to force the two of them to escape into the Netherworld God Estate. In the future, I will find an excuse to find fault with those old fellows. Today, since I have returned to the 3 realms, I will not allow any power that can resist our demonic path to exist in the 3 realms. The Netherworld God Estate is no exception. As he said this, he slightly lowered his head and looked down. Army, attack and quickly chase down those stragglers. After that, immediately massacre all the major sections. I want to kill them and make them tremble in fear. In the future, when they see our demonic path, they will obediently bow down to us. This bunch of self-proclaimed righteous people. If you treat them like dogs, they will be dogs. If you treat them like humans, they will immediately become humans. So don't show them any mercy. Of course. Don't kill all those stragglers just now. Today's matter needs to be publicized. We can't let those two fellows escape for nothing. First, control the entire Immortal realm and the 72 realms of the human world. There are many cultivators in the Netherworld. When the reinforcements from the demon realm arrive, we will sweep through the entire Netherworld. Demon Monarch 3 Knights waved his hand, indicating for everyone to carry out his orders. Yes. The heroes of the demon realm obeyed, and quickly led their armies to attack. After Nongzhu was dragged to the ground by Yu Qianqiu to hide, She immediately said unhappily. What do you want now? Of course it's to save people. We can't let the demon realm kill everyone. Yu Qianqiu sneakily popped his head out from behind a large rock. After looking around, 2 purple flames rose from his palms and clenched his fists. The dark clouds in the sky that were about to dissipate immediately surged and rolled again. Not long after, they once again gathered into a sky full of dark clouds. In the blink of an eye, the dark clouds became filled with lightning and thunder, and the sound of thunder rumbled in all directions. The demon Dao armies that had set out in pursuit quickly stopped upon receiving the order. They looked at each other in dismay as the gloomy scene returned to normal. The various demon kings turned to look at Demon Lord 3 Knights, not knowing if he had any new instructions. Even Eunuch Li and Yan Juexing looked at Demon Monarch 3 Knights in confusion. However, Demon Monarch 3 Knights was slightly stunned. Then he looked around with a serious gaze and said with a rumbling voice, I wonder which expert has arrived? Since that's the case, why don't you come out and meet me? Why hide? The moment he said this, everyone immediately understood that it wasn't Demon Monarch 3 Knights, but another expert had arrived. Everyone immediately looked around. It's me, your old man, who has arrived. I won't come out to meet you. What can you do to me? Yu Qianqiu hid behind a large rock and snickered. Nongzhu looked at the sky with a dumbfounded expression, and then looked at him. She immediately understood that he was up to no good. What are you doing? Nongzhu came over with a curious expression. Naturally, to stop the demon realm's massacre and save people. At the same time, I'm taking revenge for my dead comrades. Damn it. That third knight's killer move is powerful, but so is mine. I'll let him have a taste of it today. Yu Qianqiu snickered again. Seeing that the lightning in the sky was almost ready, he clenched his fists. Bang, 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 bang. Countless thunderbolts burst forth at the same time, causing the earth to rumble. Countless thunderbolts exploded between heaven and earth, dazzling the eyes. Innumerable thunderbolts bombarded the densely packed army of the devil world in the sky, shaking the heavens and the earth. For a moment, endless screams resounded. This time, it was not the people of the immortal underworld demon-killing alliance, but the people of the demon realm. No one had ever seen so many lightning bolts. They were denser than a spider web. No matter where they ran, there was no place to hide. They could only fight with all their might. People with cultivation like Demon King Li Tian didn't think that these lightning bolts were very powerful. They just couldn't see clearly because of the strong light. Their eyes were blurred, but they still had to keep their eyelids open. They were afraid that someone would take the opportunity to launch a sneak attack on them. How could a person who could communicate with the Dharma of heaven and earth only have this little ability? Those with slightly lower cultivation could also withstand it, but those with lower cultivation could not withstand so many lightning strikes. Each and every one of them had to deal with it painfully and wearily. As for those with lower cultivation, they really couldn't resist too many lightning bolts. They screamed and fell to the ground one by one. Bai Changchun, come out! Jin Tai, who was protected by a golden light, suddenly looked around and roared. Bai Changchun, I know it's you. What's the point of hiding? Bai Qi also narrowed his eyes and looked around. However, there were so many strong lights that it was hard to see clearly. The two of them had seen this scene in the Immortal Palace. They had always thought that this was Bai Changchun's method. Eunuch Li waved his hand to block the furious lightning for Yan Juexing. When the 3 Knights Demon Lord heard Jin Tai's call, he allowed the lightning to strike his body. He directly flew above Jin Tai and shouted, Are you sure it was done by that Bai Changchun who came from the human world? He had also heard Yan Juexing mention the number 1 expert in the human world, Bai Changchun. Bai Qi and I have personally experienced this move of his. It can't be wrong, Jin Tai said with certainty. Bai Qi also nodded to confirm. I want to see what kind of person he is. Demon King 3 Knights snorted coldly. He opened his tiger eyes and said, Demon eyes. His eyes instantly turned red and shot out 2 seemingly solid red beams of light. They pierced through the countless flashing lightning bolts and scanned the surroundings. Nongzhu, who was squatting behind a big rock with Yu Qianqiu, asked curiously, Why did Jin Tai call out Old Bai's name? Did Old Bai teach you this move? Yu Qianqiu chuckled, and was about to speak when he suddenly froze. He saw two red beams of light that looked like lasers in the sky. He couldn't help but ask curiously, "What's this?" He turned around and stood up, poking his head out from behind the rock to take a look. Nongzhu also poked her head out to join in the fun. Demon King Three Knights' demon eyes scanned the surroundings. He immediately discovered that there was a misty purple aura that couldn't be seen with the naked eye in the distance. The demon eyes quickly moved towards the source of the aura, and immediately saw two heads poking out from behind a big rock. The purple aura was rising from one of them. Demon King Three Knights immediately shouted angrily, "Sneaky bastards! Let's see where you can run to." He shot out with a swoosh. Yu Qianqiu and Nongzhu had just poked their heads out when they immediately realized that the blinding red light was shining on their bodies. Hearing the other parties shout, Yu Qianqiu immediately exclaimed, "Damn it! We've been discovered by Demon King Three Knights." Dodge. Before he finished speaking, the two of them felt a huge pressure coming towards them. The two of them were so scared that they hurriedly disappeared. Almost at the same time, the big rock they were hiding on was smashed into powder by a strong force. If they were a little bit slower, they would have lost their lives. A huge palm print was embedded in the ground. Demon King Three Knights, who was floating in the air, was stunned. Before his palm could hit the two of them, he realized that the other party had disappeared right under his nose. He quickly scanned the surroundings, but couldn't even find a trace of where the other party had gone. He couldn't help but be shocked. There was only one explanation for this. That Bai Changchun's cultivation far surpassed his. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.